And I believe that I have convinced myself that free to play is actually what's best for the game, but I'm concerned that I've convinced myself of something that's not actually true. And I think it would be pretty hypocritical of me to go ahead and make the game unless I've thoroughly vetted my free to play is okay point of view in my current situation. So you seem like a person who hates free to play as much as me, and likes arguing, probably not as much as me, but maybe, and have my previous opinion that free to play is just straight up awful all the time, and there's absolutely no redemption for it. So if I can convince you, or at least throw ideas off of you, even if I don't convince you, if you're just like, if you still think it's bad, but I can like get new ideas about why it's bad, or it makes my position makes me feel stronger about my position, or it kills my position, whatever. I just want to test my position against somebody, who could actually perhaps prove me wrong, if that makes any sense.
It makes perfect sense.
Okay.
First of all, I would say you're never going to make it as a Zynga executive, right? That's just the stuff you just said there. They're never going to promote you, man. It's not going to happen.
I'll survive.
Okay, fair enough. All right. That all makes good sense. I think that's exactly what I understood from the email. So hopefully everyone at home's on the same page as well. But before we start, I felt like it was important for us to kind of like set the tone, right? So that is why I developed this particular treat for you.
Oh boy.
So what I'd like you to do, if you could, because I mean, you have to understand, right? Like, I don't get really paid for this, right? This is outside of Handmade Heroes time. So essentially,
Just thank you, by the way.
essentially, this is free, right? Like, it's basically a service for you that I'm providing, which I'm happy to do, right? Okay, but I said I would do the argument, and the argument is going to be free, but the catch is that the rest of the stuff that might happen on this stream, besides me arguing with you, is not going to be free. So if you go ahead and go to handmadehero.org/donate.html, I'm sorry, debate.html.
Oh God.
You can see that I've created a bunch of add-ons for you. And those add-ons are ones you can purchase at any time during the debate, and I'll honor them. But in general, without purchasing any of them, all you get is actually just the argument, just in audio form. So it's up to you. Again, the argument, I'll argue exactly as strenuously and as hard. The argument will be exactly the same. There's no integrity difference here. It's just cosmetic changes. I've only put cosmetic changes on there.
All right.
So, let's continue.
Well, okay, hold on. I do have to I can't actually purchase any of these items because I don't own a credit card. But I would love to buy the EFF hat. If you have an EFF hat, I would like to buy that.
You want to
But I
buy
don't
the
have
EFF hat?
Yeah, but I don't have $2, or I don't have a credit card, so I
Oh
guess I can't.
man, all right. Well, that's really difficult for me because I feel like in general, if you wanted in your game, what will you do for people who don't have credit cards?
They just don't have to. They don't have to pay anything.
Okay, so they wouldn't get the EFF hat.
They wouldn't get the EFF hat.
Okay, so probably we're going to have to continue the debate without the EFF hat, right? Because I mean, at the end of the day, if you can't pay for the free-to-play stuff, you can't pay for the free-to-play stuff. Now, I guess you could try to convince someone else on the stream to pay for it. I mean, anyone could buy it, and that's okay with me. But someone's going to have to pay the $2 for the EFF hat. Now, of course, we don't even have the video add-on yet. So at this point, you wouldn't really even be able to see the EFF hat, I guess.
Is the video add-on? You have to pay for that too?
So there's a lot of stuff there that would have to happen. But let's continue the argument. Just with that in mind.
Oh my God, $1 for the video add-on. I really want to pay for this.
So here's the thing. Basically, like with free to play, the first thing I guess I would ask is what you sort of laid out there when you were talking. Sort of suggests to me that there's stuff about the game that maybe I need to know in order to effectively argue this. Because you said something like the most effective thing here, right? Like the best business model for it, you said, was going to be free to play. So could you maybe start by telling me why is it that you think that that business model is somehow special for your game, or that give me a little bit of background there so I know why you're coming to that conclusion.
Sure. Well, this is going to be unfortunate because you said in the Q&A of Handmade Hero that you don't care about esports at all.
So that's just me playing them.
Right, I know.
I'm totally fine taking the position. I understand millions of people love them, so let's take it a given that people will like that. So don't worry about that.
Okay, so yeah, like I want to take Dota, okay? Just say Dota. Let's just start there. I want to make a game that's like Dota, right? Okay,
Yep.
so what is required to make it a good competitive esport, right? There's a couple of things.
Oh my God! Wait a minute. People have purchased the video add-on, Sean.
This dude, I'm telling you, man, free to play makes mad money.
And 2 people have purchased the EFF hat.
You have to wear 2 hats now.
And the ad-free credit. There were going to be advertisements, and they've already done 15 minutes worth of ad-free on the street. Jeez, this is going to be hard for me to even keep track of. Hold on.
How can you argue against this? The money is rolling in. Did your mic go?
All right. Hello?
Hi.
Am I still there? I had to put on the hat. Can you see the EFF hat? People paid good money for this.
I've got the stream delay thing, so I don't know what's going on. Look at that. Do you have one of those stickers that say, "I do not consent to the search of this device"?
I don't.
With the EFF logo? You should get one.
I don't. And I also guess at this point, if people want me to turn on the light, there's also the global illumination add-on that they can buy. I just want to remind them of that. So anyway,
I just want to say that on my end, I'm offering all of this for free. This is all the basics.
This is all the basic package. Wow, man,
yeah.
you're not going to last long on this. Okay, but so continue.
Okay, so basically, okay, so there's 2 sort of main factors with trying to make a game that's competitively viable that has the depth and the breadth of Dota, right? The first one is obviously a lot of people need to play it, right? Like the people who, you can go back and you can look at. I've been an esport fan for a very, very long time, and it stretches back to Brood War when it was only in Korea, and you can look at Brood War in Korea and how the strategies developed over time. Blizzard didn't do patches for 6 years, I think,
Okay.
and none of the units that Blizzard had designed were used in the way in which they had designed them, right? What happened is the game was played by hundreds of thousands, millions of people. Strategies developed and things like that. So the only way that the game actually got competitively viable and competitively deep was through a lot of people playing it.
Okay.
So you need a lot of people to play it, right?
Okay.
So therefore, the more people playing it, the better the game is going to get because you have more data to analyze and you can balance things better, right?
Okay.
So free to play gets a lot of people playing it. Okay, so that's one thing. The second thing is, in order to, now this goes against Brood War, but I think times are different now. In order to sort of foster an online community and remain competitive and host tournaments and get people together, to have stats, to have a hosted dedicated server, all that fun stuff that everyone likes, matchmaking and all that crap, you have ongoing expenses, right? You have you don't have your expenses upfront at time of purchase of the game. You have your expenses carried on for indefinitely, right?
Yeah.
So the free-to-play model lines up your revenue with your expenses better than anything else. Subscription does it too, but subscription doesn't work for the first problem, which is getting a lot of people to play it, right? So you have the 2 problems are you need money constantly because the game is expensive constantly, and you need a lot of people playing it. And ad supported, maybe that's an option, but like realistically, and I wouldn't ever do ad supported, but free to play seems to be the thing that fits both of those 2 requirements better than anything else. And I think its downsides can be not mitigated against, but can be lessened by a benevolent dictator, basically.
So, just to be clear, when you say that subscription model doesn't get a lot of people playing the game, what you're talking about sustain, because I'm assuming most games nowadays that I think of for subscription model, their games like World of Warcraft or something like this in the earlier before they went. I think they're somewhat half free now or something like that. But in the
I
early
think so.
days, you would get a month free or something like that. So you did start out, you could have arbitrarily many people playing for a month, right? But then presumably after that they would winnow away or something like this, right?
Yeah, and I don't even know, like, because there's not a lot of subscription-based games that are coming out now. So I have absolutely no idea if that's even viable at all now, right? Like, there's no data in the last couple of years of subscription-based games coming out and doing okay. Everything's been moving to free to play.
Okay. So I guess let's take a look at that specific aspect then. Because, like you said, you were somebody who previously didn't agree with free to play as a model, right?
I
Just in
still think
general.
that every free to play as is awful and
Okay.
unacceptable. I don't think anyone is doing it. There's a gradient of people doing it really, really poorly and people doing it slightly less evilly. But I don't think anyone doing it now is doing it like to meet my what I would call my minimal ethical standards for it. But that doesn't mean that that doesn't exist.
Okay, so I guess maybe before I go any further on that topic, then, and also I should say that people have purchased all of the hat add-ons for me now, so I kind of feel like I should probably switch hats periodically. So don't be alarmed when I do that,
Wear them
because
all at once.
yeah, well, I feel like people want to see individual hats. So someone purchased the pig hat and also the luxurious deluxe top hat, so that'll be coming out later as well. Um, okay, so I guess if we're going to talk about that one part, then again, that's information that I don't quite have yet, which is what is it that you are saying is like this ethical, like what are you going to be doing that you feel makes this more ethical than say what Valve is doing with Dota or something like this?
Okay, so Valve is probably the closest.
Okay, so
The,
they're you would call them as far down on the ethics, like as far down on, or as far up on the ethical, however you want to call it, as close to good on the ethical scale as exists at the moment
that I'm aware
that
of,
you are
yes. I mean,
aware of. Okay.
yes. And I actually have done quite a bit of research into this.
Okay.
What Valve does wrong is they spend all of their development budget on cosmetics. I don't know. I think there's 27 people working on Dota, last I heard, and I don't know how those people's time are allocated. But based on what sorry, it's really distracting seeing you with the pig hat on with stream delay, so I have to minimize that. Sorry. Um, so what Valve, I think they have 27 people working on Dota. That's the last I heard. I don't know if that's true or not anymore. But the majority of their money seems to go into cosmetics, right? Producing cosmetics. Based on what they actually release, most of their work seems to be cosmetics, and another interesting thing is player content tools. So you can go make a cosmetic for Dota and then sell it on the Valve store,
Right, they've got
or
like
on
the Steam Workshop stuff and all that, right?
right. But they release like their 3D editing, like their animation editing tools. They release their particle system tools, their whole pipeline for importing and creating cosmetics. They've released all of that, right? And they put a lot of effort into it because they're not like I've tried them. They're not like developer tools. Like they're actually their UIs
They're
are
more
actually
end
like
user focused, yeah.
yeah, exactly. So they seem to be putting effort into that and cosmetic items. They're putting very little effort into uh, very little resources relative to the rest of the development budget or relative to their income is more like it, right? To actually improving the game for everybody. And that's where I think that's where I have an issue with Valve's ethics. I mean, clearly they're doing like they're not bad because all their stuff is free. Like you can play the entirety of the game for free. It's only cosmetics, blah blah blah. All that's good, but their development resources I don't think are I don't think they're putting enough development resources into making the game better. Like there's still two heroes from Dota 1 that have not been ported to Dota 2 for like 6 years now, or TI 5 years now. How is that possible? Like it's not that hard. And they're making I don't know how much, literally billions of dollars off of it. Like they should have been able to devote more resources to the game, and they're not. And that's where I have an issue with what Valve's doing. But I think otherwise I'm okay with what Valve's doing. So yeah, that would be my sort of ethical thing is basically what Valve's doing. I don't know about the workshop and the user tools. I don't know how I feel about that. And then actually taking the money that we make off free to play and putting it all into the game, not like 10% of it and then going and driving Ferraris off cliffs or whatever they do with their money.
I'm pretty sure that driving Ferraris off cliffs is a pretty big line item, but it probably doesn't account for all of it.
Well, I don't know.
So I guess the thing that I would point out, which I mean, hopefully, like I think this is kind of obvious, right? That what you just described is kind of what the primary fear is with the whole concept of free to play, which is that the product isn't the game. The product is the part that you sell. That's what you're actually making your money off. So isn't it kind of just a very natural consequence of trying to run a business whose product is the cosmetics, that most of the money would be spent on the cosmetics? Like, isn't that kind of a consequence of if a business adopts this business model?
Well, that's the case if it's like a publicly held corporation because they have to maximize profit, right? But that's not the case for Valve. They're not public. And even if they said the majority of their development budget was spent on cosmetics, that's fine. You can do that if they're spending an adequate amount on everything else, which they're not, which is the problem, right? So like if they're making, I don't know how much, what did they make? Like $1 billion off Dota last year? Revenue, I don't know what their expenses are, but it can't be, their server expenses can't be that high, right? So they don't really have that high of a per user cost, but they're making, I think, 270 per user per month or something like that. If they were to take, their, let's say they make let's say $250 million of profit, right? Somehow they have $750 million of server expenses. I don't know how, but that's what their server expenses are. If they're making only $250 million of profit off of the game, they're not putting anywhere near that back into the game, right? So when you're putting, with 27 people, right? Riot has 1,000, right? Valve could easily grow the Dota team. I know Valve's motto is we never hire people or whatever, and we hate hiring, which is fine. But when you take in that much money, I believe you have a responsibility to put majority of it back into the game. And if you want to spend, if they're making, say, $250 million or whatever it is, and they put $200 million back into the development over the course of a year, if they put $100 million of that into cosmetics, that's fine, because they're still putting $100 million into development, which they're not. I don't know how many people, like I said, I don't know how many people are actually working on live development, but I feel like two people could be doing as much as they're getting done. Not, that's outside of their like content creation tools and things like that, but just actual content that's added to the game, it's like two or three people's worth of work. So that's my problem with it, is that they aren't putting enough into the actual development of the game. They could, like I said, that they could put a lot into cosmetics. I don't think that's a problem as long as they put more back into it. But like you said, it's if you're trying to run it as a business, if you're trying to run it as a business to maximize profit, then no, it can never ever be ethical. But you don't have to run a business to maximize profit.
Well, so I guess the next question that I would ask then is, what is that balance? So normally in, a traditional marketplace, if the question is, okay, I am trying to provide this thing, whatever it is, and in this case, it's a game. Normally what we do is we say, well, I want to know how much money I should put towards the development of the game. So I set a price for the game, like a subscription fee or whatever it is, and then I know everyone who pays that subscription fee is trying to pay me to develop more of this game. That's really obvious, like, what that means. But in the model that you're sort of advocating, it's sort of a like developer honor system, I guess you might call it. You're basically saying, well, we're going to have the product not be that thing, meaning nobody pays for the development of the game. The development of the game is just supposed to happen, right? What you pay for is a bunch of cosmetic items, but we don't expect you to spend all your time developing the cosmetic items. We expect you, in order to be an ethical developer, to set some percentage of that diversion. So how are you seeing that as a model? Who sets that percentage? Do you set that percentage? As the developer, are you making that percentage up? Like, how is that economic system working?
Well, it doesn't work because I don't think anyone does this.
I'm saying in your game that you're advocating it's going to work.
Yeah, well, I mean, if a certain amount of money gets made, then yes, of course it will work because there's enough money to throw at the problem, and then the problem goes away. But
Well, no, even that. I'm not even talking about the problem goes away. I'm like saying we have a decision. We could hire another artist to make cosmetic items, or we can hire another programmer to work on gameplay code or something, right?
right.
Which one of those two people do we hire? How is that decision getting made?
Yeah, like that's actually the root of the problem, right? I don't know how you actually make that decision. I think you'd have to make that decision. I think you have to be somewhat transparent about it and just be like, look, this is how much, if we're open about it, we say, look, this is how much money we're spending on development of the game. This is how much money we're spending on development of cosmetics. And this is how much money we're making. I don't think we would talk about that. But maybe we could be public with, here's the percentage that goes into development of cosmetics, and here's the percentage that goes into development of the game. And if we're transparent about that, does that alleviate that concern?
Well, I guess I don't know if it alleviates the concern or not. It's simply a more something to think about in terms of if you believe that this sort of a model was something that you're saying is okay in general to adopt. Because presumably you're not. I mean, maybe you are making this argument, but I don't know. But presumably you're not making the argument that you are the one company that is ever allowed to ethically adopt this model. Presumably,
Well,
you're
I
saying,
sort of am.
okay. Okay, so what you're saying is that if I wanted to make a game using
No,
this
you're allowed
model,
to.
I'm,
You're
I
allowed
am
to,
okay. So there are two people. There are two people allowed to do it.
basically.
Okay, in all seriousness, are you really saying that?
No, well, no, but there are very few people whom I would even trust with what I'm asking people to trust me with, if that makes any sense. And I didn't, and the trust thing is an issue, and I do hope that we can come up with a way to be transparent enough that the trust isn't there as an issue. But yeah, no, I do think that it puts too much power into the developer to make arbitrary decisions about where to spend people's money to make the game better, right? Like if the decision is entirely up to the developer and it's in a black box and a closed room and no one knows about it, right? Like that's a problem, period, no matter who's in charge. Um, and I don't know how you sort of solve that other than with trusting the developer. And like you were asking, is am I advocating that I'm the only one who can do it? I don't know who else I would trust with it, to be completely honest. So perhaps in like some weird way, I am saying that. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to do about this other than hope that transparency sort of solves it.
Well, I think that there's a real problem there, right? Because I mean, essentially what you're saying, if that is what it all boils down to, essentially what you're saying is this is not a good idea, but don't worry because I'm a good person. So the fact that it's not a good idea is not going to affect me. Meaning
No, I'm
all
not
of the
saying that.
incentives that are there that are to drive development in different directions than they should be driven, I'm not going to fall prey to them because I'm me,
Well,
right?
no, I mean like that's like the funny way of phrasing it. But like no matter what you do, there's downsides, right? Like no matter what business model you choose to run, there are positives and negatives to it, right? Let's say we this game costs $3 million to make, and let's say I have $3 million and I spend $3 million and I make this game, right? And I charge $40 for it, and it doesn't make that money, right? I'm screwed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not good for the game, and the game will be a failure, and no one will play it, and blah blah blah, right? No matter what you do, there's positives and negatives to your business model choice, right? Doesn't matter what it is. In this situation, the negative of who controls development resources and all and the question you brought up, I think is far, far, far less of a negative than not having enough people to gather enough data to make intelligent, balanced decisions, or not be able to run the community that we need to run and not be able to run the matchmaking servers and the game servers and all that fun stuff that we need to run in order to make the game competitively viable. Not being able to run those is much more of a negative than the development resource issue, in my opinion. Do you disagree with that?
Yes. I mean, I don't know that I disagree with the specifics of that analysis. What I disagree with is the framing of it. So what it suggests is that there's a pros and cons column of different funding models, and that what we're talking about is what are the pros of one and what are the cons of the other. But I don't think that's really a very fair way to look at what these business models actually mean, because actually what's more important about the business models is not pros and cons, but rather where the incentives are, right? Meaning it's sort of more, it's less like saying, you know, you know, there's a risk here and there's a benefit there. It's more saying, okay, normally if you sell a game, your incentive is to make the game good as a whole, right?
Okay.
There's no other incentives there, right? The only incentive is to convince people that this is a good game and that they should buy it. There's no smaller, you know, there's no more fine-grained incentive than that. That's your goal. The game is the product. If you make it good, then it is a good product that people might want, right? If you don't, it isn't. That's very straightforward, right? In the case that you're sort of advocating with the free-to-play, then it's about what the incentives are for the developer. You are not incentivized as a developer, economically speaking, to make the game better. You're incentivized to make a game where people will purchase add-ons. That's what you're incentivized to do, just straight up. Because you could make the best game that anyone's ever had, but if it doesn't run in a way that encourages add-ons, you will never make the money you need to do any of the things you're talking about. So it's less about what the pros and cons are, and more about what you as a developer must think about day to day in order to survive. The first thing in your head has to be, how do I monetize this game? Rather than, how do I make this game great? How do I make this game great is only a tangential step to the process of getting someone to click on the I want to buy a hat. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. There's two things here.
And
First,
while you're answering that, I'm going to switch hats from the pig to the top hat because someone bought that as well.
all right then. I want to know how much money you make off this, by the way.
I'm going to do something with it at Handmade Con. All of the money that comes from it, I'll like. I wanted to force you to have to buy these things. So the stream has. I shouldn't have announced the URL. That was my mistake. But okay.
I would have bought them. Sorry.
All right.
That's how like anti everything I am. I don't even have a credit card.
That's impressive, man.
Or a cell phone.
That's impressive.
So, anyways, okay. So there's. Yes, what you just said is completely true, right? The first, why do you think we're looking at Granny? Because we have to do attachment points and skinning around attachment points and things like that, and that's just going to be
you gotta
like
put the hats on, man.
That's like a mess to program, right? Like that's going to be like 2 months of work or something, right? Just to get all that right and get like a pipeline for exporting and then attachment points and skinning meshes on fuck that shit. Sorry, I can't swear.
It's okay.
That I didn't want to do that. That's why we're looking at Granny, right? Because of free to play, right? So yes, you're absolutely right. That's something that we have to consider at all times.
If I may interject just one pro tip, and I learned this from many years of working on that product, try to watch your phrasing because you end up saying things like, that's why we're looking at Granny. And it just sounds bad out of context. I've done a lot of things like, oh man, I've been doing Granny for 5 years, or all these things. Like, you just want to make sure that you just kind of say like, it was a mistake. I admit that. We should have named the product something that doesn't have those accidents in it. Anyway, continue.
Did you choose the name?
We chose the name together, I guess.
All right, well, yeah. I like it. Okay, so the other issue I think is kind of naive from your point of view, right? Like, it's not true that when you make a game that all you care about is making a really good game to sell it. Like, that's just flat out, just demonstrably not true. Right? Like, look at development budgets versus marketing budgets of games, right? Marketing budget of Halo is more than the development budget, right? Marketing budget of Madden or whatever is more than the development budget, right? So that's not true. And
well, what's not true?
That the only thing you're concerned about with the create a product and sell it model is that all you're concerned about is quality. You're not concerned about anything else.
But no, I'm talking about the developer. The marketing budget's the same in any case. Like, you're going to have all those same things are true about marketing on your end, meaning you still have to market the game. So we're talking about the person developing the actual game.
Right, but the free-to-play part of it could just be considered, a marketing thing, right? Like, it could be like we're making the game irrespective. We're making the game completely in isolation of the free-to-play and marketing stuff, and the free-to-play marketing stuff is done on its own with a separate budget, and that's like a marketing side, right? Like that's different from the actual game. Now, there's crossover, of course,
But
with, like I
no,
said,
that's
we were
again,
talking about.
I would also disagree with that categorization, right? Because they are fundamentally different. In one case, you were talking about trying to raise the awareness of or convince people that they want to purchase this game that you have made, right?
Yes.
In the other case, you actually have to have the game itself be something that has these things in it and that encourages you to purchase them, because otherwise you won't, right?
No, yeah, okay, but
They're fundamentally different things. One is about marketing a thing that you made. The other is making a thing that has this separate commercial product inside of it. And they're not, I don't think you can analogize them in as straightforward a fashion as you did.
okay, that's fair. That's true. On the flip side, though, even the products themselves are different, right? Because this isn't like a product that you could put in a box and ship, and then me as the developer would walk away from, right? Like with Dyad or whatever, right? I ship the game and I'm done, right? Save a bug patch, which I never actually had to do one for Dyad. It was bug free. So, I was just done, right? So I shouldn't be getting any more money for that, and I shouldn't be worrying about it because I'm done. With this game, it's not done, right? When it comes out, even if it came out after $3 million or whatever amount of development budget to get like a finished product out, the game's still not done. Ever. It's potentially never done, right? Because
Yes,
there's always
it's ongoing.
always balances, there's always new things to add, there's always new game modes, there's tons of crap. Like I've been thinking about this game for 6 years, right? I have like binders full of notes about things that I want to try, and this is an ongoing thing. So having a payment model that matches the ongoingness of the design and development of the game, I think that actually is more ethical because now I'm encouraged to or
But it doesn't.
incentivized. How
It
so?
doesn't match the model of the game because the things that people are paying for aren't in the binders.
Okay, but if
It incentivizes you to
that's
spend
not
time not implementing the binders because they can't buy the stuff that's in the binders. Stuff in the binders is the game that you got to do
right.
for free.
Well, it's not. Well, yes, that is that is a very black and white, I think, way of looking at it, right? You say all you're doing is developing, all you care about is, or all that matters for making money is the cosmetics, right? And that's just not true. Like, if the game isn't good, although this statement, I can say there's evidence that it's not true, but in the except for the case of League of Legends, games that the game has to be good. It has to continuously improve. It has to get better. It has to actually be a good game. Money needs to be spent on the development of the game. Otherwise, people notice that you're only doing cosmetics, and
Yes.
people lose interest, right? And it's not. And these are like literally only cosmetics.
Right.
There's no play to win or anything like that. So there's no incentive to. We can't make the game not better. We have to
Right.
continuously make the game better. So that's. I don't think that separating them in such a black and white way is fair.
I think it's actually, I wouldn't even call it just fair. I would almost say that what you just said is exactly the point that I'm trying to make. The way you described it was exactly encapsulated what I feel is so detrimental about the business model, right? The way you talked about it is like, we can't, we have to make the game good enough or no one will play it, ... so we won't, so no one will buy the hats, right? And it's like, that is exactly the correct statement for the position the developer's in. The game and making it good enough, the only requirement is that it's good enough that people will play it so they'll buy the hats. There is no,
That's not.
right?
But that's. I only said it for demonstrating your point here. That is true. That is the minimum goodness that the game has to be, right? But like, you
Yeah,
have to.
that's the problem.
Okay, but there's a minimum goodness that the next Assassin's Creed game has to be too, right? Like there's a minimum goodness that the next Call of Duty game has to be too, right? And whatever the companies that make those are will push to that minimum, and that's it. How is that any different?
Well, I don't think that's actually true with those games, right? If they make a much better game, or at least the theory is, if you make a much better game, especially as an independent developer, you know, when you're talking about triple A with extra A's on the end of it or whatever, then again, kind of who knows, because maybe it's goes into the realm of like pop culture and marketing and at that point or whatever. But for an indie studio at least, if you make a much better game, presumably a lot more people are talking about it, a lot more people are playing it, that sort of thing. It's the kind of a thing where the game itself is, in general, the better it is, the more of a product it becomes. Whereas instead, if you just talk about a situation where it's like, well, we make money on this separate part of the game that isn't the game because nobody paid for the game, then really we have a different curve that we're shooting for. It doesn't even necessarily matter how many people play the game. What matters is if the people who spend a lot of money on add-ons play the game. We don't even care if good players play this game. It could all be bad players that play this game. We don't even care if it's balanced, because balance won't necessarily affect it, right? We don't even know, and it doesn't matter, all of those things. They are only relevant to our survival insofar as they might prevent people from participating in the secondary economy. Whereas none of those things would generally be true for a different type of game. For a different type of game, it's just the product. There's no whaleness to it. There's no concept that certain players are more valuable for us to have than others. None of that is true, right? So I don't see how you're getting there. I don't see her getting there with that.
Well, okay, so all of what you just said describes Riot to a T, right? That's Riot right there for you, right? All they care about is getting their maximum. Like, they don't care about the competitiveness of it. Like, there's just years of demonstrating that they don't care about the quality of their game. They only care about catering to their most valuable players or whatever, right? And yes, that's, that happens. That's why free to play sucks, right? But that doesn't need to happen. It doesn't have to be that way, right? Like, that's just because it's easy to make money when you do that. That's what people do. But it doesn't have to be that way, right? Like, Valve does a pretty reasonable job of not doing that. They do some stuff with, rewards at the end of a game and randomized boxes and all that fun stuff that they do. That stuff is questionable, but for the most part, the way in which they balance the game, at least the way in which the game design ideas are applied, too slowly in my opinion, but the way in which the game ideas are applied, like Ice Frog's balances, and whenever they remodel a hero, they do a really good job with it. Like, everything is, the voice acting is incredible, and that's all free or whatever. They're putting the money into actually making the game better. And I think that if you look at relative player rates, relative player base increases or decreases, and you look at Dota versus League of Legends, the graphs are like in a complete opposite direction, right? Dota's gaining players at the relative rate that League is losing players. So I think that the quality of the game is what actually does matter. You're saying it has absolutely no bearing on anything. The only thing that matters is the quality of the things that you sell, or the way in which you construct your Skinner box to get people to buy things, right? And I don't think that's true. It doesn't have to be true. It might be true in most examples, but I don't think it has to be true. I think you can make the game and continue to make it better with the money that you're making off the free-to-play things. Spend a good chunk of your money on actually improving the game versus spending it on hats. I don't see why you can't do that.
Well, it's not really that you can't do something, right? Because most things that are a bad idea, or most things that are generally unethical, like if you're talking about a process, a virtuous and divine being who comes down and wants to do them in a way that isn't evil could, right? Like, you can be a stockbroker who isn't evil. It's just the system is not set up to reward that, so as a result, that is not who stays in business, right? The people who participate in business models which are inherently rewarding of devious behavior or manipulative behavior, the people who tend to survive are the ones who engage in that behavior, right? That's just the nature of incentives. They are creating a feedback function which makes it more likely that bad behavior is reinforced, right? That's what that means.
That's true. That is certainly true.
So that, again, that's why I think it gets back to what we started this with, which is, it sounds like what you're saying is, yes, the business model has all of the problems that we're talking about, but the reason you don't have to worry about it is because I, Sean McGrath, am a good enough person that that's not going to happen to me, right?
Okay, so there's two things here. We're talking about incentives. I want to get back to incentives in a second.
Okay.
But me, Sean McGrath, being benevolent dictator or whatever.
Yes.
Now, I would
It's a
like,
Plato. It's a Plato sort of the classic Plato thing. Dictators are great if you have the exact right one.
yes, exactly. So I'm willing to hear any ideas to minimize my power in this relationship that I would be bringing on with people who might buy a hat in my game, right? I want to not be a benevolent dictator. I would much rather be in a situation where I'm like legally enforced or legally required or something to not be a dick. Like if there's a law that like requires it, I would feel totally comfortable with that. And I don't actually have an answer to that. I don't know what I can do to like alleviate that concern. But what I am getting at though is that in this situation, because of my goals for the game, which are to make it a highly competitive, high quality, Dota level quality, much more competitively viable than even Dota game. Free to play fits that better than anything else. And yes, it has downsides, and yes, those downsides can potentially be crazy evil. But what can you do? But you were talking about. By the way, what can you do isn't rhetorical. What can you do if you can give me ideas and suggestions, or if anybody has any ideas or suggestions to what I can do to sort of shift the balance of power away from, a benevolent dictator to people, I would love to hear it because I'm certainly would like to do that, right? Like this isn't a scam to make a whole bunch of money. This is like I literally think free to play is the best possible option for this game because you were talking about incentives before, right? And I was saying that the development cost is an ongoing thing, right? I'm incentivized to continue to work on the game and continue to make it better. Now, whether or not you think that the incentive is more towards making hats or more towards making a better game, it can't be argued that there is at least something to making a better game, where after a game that's been released, that's been sold with a sticker price, there's no more incentive to work on the game ever, right? We could shut the servers down next week. Release the game, shut the servers down, right? That would actually be the most economically viable thing to do. That's what I would be incentivized to do, right? Make the game, sell as much as possible, shut the servers down as soon as possible. That would be the best way to make money off of a game where you just buy it at the start. So,
well, not really if you assume that people buy it over time, but either way, like
shut it down as soon as possible, right?
Well, yeah. After I guess when you perceive there to be no more, you aren't really gaining any more users. I guess then you would say, okay, we'll finish. But
yeah.
So I guess what I would say though there is what you're saying when you're saying like if there's some law or if there's something. I guess what I was trying to say at the beginning was that that's what traditional purchasing models are. Traditional purchasing models are the best thing that we've found for ensuring that what you sell is the thing you are incentivized to make. That's what that is. It's because we don't know how to create a law that says, if we're paying generally money for this thing, please do a good job shepherding it. We don't know of a better way to do that, right? If we did, we should replace capitalism in general with that concept because, man, that would be better, right?
Yeah.
So capitalism is just the only way we've actually found the concept that there's a product with some profit margin built in, and you look to see what you might want to spend your money on, and you buy that thing. That is what we figured out. That is that law. And so when you replace that with free to play, what you're doing is saying you don't want to play by that law anymore. You're saying you don't actually want the law where people have to buy a particular thing that is the thing that they actually are getting. Instead, you're trying to sort of bifurcate that and say, well, I don't feel like I can figure out a way to sell you this product as a product. So instead, I'm going to give it to you and then try to get you to do other things that will generate revenue for me. And that, like I said, despite anything that we've said on the stream so far, really just sounds to me like a trust me, right? It's like, trust me, I won't make it sleazy. And at the end of the day, like, okay, you might not, right? You might not do that. But that doesn't really change any arguments fundamentally about the business model. The business model itself still has none of that protection for the consumer built into it. Whereas, say, even a model that was more like every 4 months we sell the update to this thing, which is the new game set that people buy or something, or a subscription model where you pay a small amount, $1 a month or something like this, would have that built in, because now you're just incentivized to give people a good overall experience, and there is no need to create things where they're incentivized to shop, to buy hats, to do whatever, which, you know, if you're fantastically lucky and maybe it's just you and 5 guys or whatever, hey, you hit some, it hits big and you never have to worry, so you're not incentivized to make bad decisions all that much, and you're a good guy, so it goes great or whatever. But think about the other case where you're just, it's on the line and you don't know if you're going to make payroll next month, and you can do this giant hat promotion or whatever, right? It's like, it's just not set up to incentivize good behavior.
No, and like you said, okay, so that example that you just said, right, where you do the giant hat sale, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you do the giant hat sale. Okay, so you have to do that, right? But the other you do the giant hat sale as a temporary thing, by the way. I don't mean like that's the whole game from
But
now
then
on.
it makes a lot of money, and then it's like, well, every quarter we have the giant hat sale.
Okay, let's hypothetically say that happens.
Yeah, a little slippery slope. I'm just giving you a slippery slope.
Oh, it's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
But like your example of we do a giant hat sale once every 4 months or 3 months, right? That's not so bad. Like that's not the end of the world, right? Like if you change the game and you sacrifice, development resources to do the hats, or
Well, of course,
buy hats everywhere while you're playing the game or whatever, then you have a problem, right?
How are you going to do a giant hat sale without doing the things you just said? I mean, you have to put a ton of art resources behind making the 100 hats for the hat sale and the hat days of Christmas, right? The 12 days of Hatmas or whatever.
Of
right?
course.
I mean, isn't that exactly what we're talking about?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think like to a degree, yes, right? But I think when you have to take the other side of it too, right? Which is you're getting ongoing revenue. And you can use your ongoing revenue to support ongoing development, right? And I think that's really important. That's a very important distinction between making your money up front. If you make your money up front, you can't do that. No, you're talking about subscription, and I think subscription is just dead. I don't think you could do subscription. Like I don't think it's financially viable to do subscription. If you can prove me wrong, I'd like to hear examples. But
Snapchat?
From what I can tell, sorry?
Not Snapchat. Sorry. WhatsApp.
I mean for a game. And WhatsApp is free.
$1 a month.
Pretty sure.
I'm sorry,
free.
$1 a year. It was $1 a year.
Sure it was, but I'm pretty sure it's free now.
Well, yeah, after Facebook bought them.
Okay, so it's been dead for 3, 4, 5 years.
Well, but they got, millions of people. They had, I don't even know how many users they had. It was some ridiculously huge number, right?
Yeah, Blizzard had how many tens of millions or 10 million or whatever paying for WoW monthly. They don't anymore. I don't know. Like that's.
Well, but that game is also. How old is that game? I don't even want to know how old that game is.
I bet you they're making more money now with free to play, to be honest, than they ever were.
Oh, yeah, and again, I will never argue with you that you won't make more money if you want to go like the free to play route, right? It's a big money maker because it's a way of kind of suckering people into something,
right?
And then charging them in different ways that you figure out to charge them, right?
Yeah,
but
I
the
completely
point is
agree
more
with you.
like, I don't know, are you sure the subscription can't work, right?
Pretty sure.
How? Like WhatsApp was pretty late in the game. Like Zynga had come and gone by the time WhatsApp was charging $1 a year for subscriptions.
Okay. Okay. So let's use it. I'd like to hear a game example, right? Because from what I can tell, every game is getting off of subscription and going to free to play. Now that could be just to maximize revenue. I don't know. But the other side of like my 2 points about why I thought free to play was best. The other side is. Sorry, what was shit? I've already lost my train of thought. Sorry. The other side was we need as many people to play it as possible in order to get balanced data, to get data to balance the game, right? Like that's supremely important. Like that's the number one most important thing is if we get 100 million people playing the game or whatever ridiculous number we can get, like 1 million people, 100,000 people playing the game would be fantastic. That gives us enough data to actually make intelligent balance decisions, right? I don't think we can get that without it being free. I just don't think that I don't think people are willing to spend $1 a month even. I just don't. Like if there's a game that you can point me to where they've actually successfully recently in the last 2 years successfully run a subscription model, I would like to hear it because I don't know of any.
What does EVE Online do, by the way?
EVE Online is weird. There are subscription, but you can buy in-game. You can buy your subscription cards with in-game currency, so people make money off of like creating in-game currency by blowing up ships and salvaging them and stuff, and then buying time cards and then selling those. So
that is a very interesting concept. Okay.
Eve is one of the most interesting games
Okay.
out there. If you're ever interested in reading about fiction in games, you should read about Eve
Okay.
fiction. Because like the Russian mafia lost $250,000 in like one day, and there was a huge
Oh my
drama about
lord.
it.
Okay.
It's really great. It's great. Anyways, so
But
no, I
wait,
don't.
so are they like is their revenue then coming from subscriptions?
That was a couple of years ago when I learned
Okay.
about that. I don't know about it now.
Okay.
Maybe, but I bet you it's purely historical.
Okay.
I mean, games that have come, like new games that have come out because Eve has been around for 10 years or whatever.
Well, here's another question for you. So, how much money are you expecting people to spend on this game every month in general with your F2P model?
Okay, that's a pretty complex question. Do you mean just median dollar spent per user playing, or do
Uh,
you mean
we'll
like
start there.
okay, $2,
$2
two
a
bucks,
month.
$2 a month on average per person?
So basically, we're talking $24 a year.
Yeah,
So basically, it's like them buying your game at retail or whatever, on Steam or something, once every year,
once every 2 years.
something like that.
Once
Well,
every 2 years.
I don't know what your price point is. Could be $25, right? I
It
mean,
would
but
be. This is going to be like a pretty like Dota level quality.
so
Dota
so
2 level.
so it might not be every 2 years. It would be every year then, because they'd have to pay $24 a year for a Dota level game is going to be $25, not 12.
Have you played it and seen the quality of the voice acting and all that fun stuff?
I'm just saying it's yeah. But I'm saying it should be 25, and you're saying it should be 12. Every 2 years would be
Oh, sorry. I'm saying
$12.
I'm saying it should be like $60.
Oh, okay. So it's more like you have to buy it twice a year. You have to buy it at the beginning of the year and in the middle of the year or something like that.
Am I getting my math wrong? If I'm spending $25 every year, that's $50 every 2 years, which would be buying the game once every 2 years.
Never mind. Yes, I guess that's true.
Okay.
No, you're doing your math right.
Okay. You're doing your math wrong.
That is correct.
All right. At least one of us was.
All right, so they'd have to buy the game once every 2 years. And how
Sure.
long is this game going to be running for?
This is where I think that I'm being super non benevolent dictatory here. Once the game is like once we shut down production and shut down servers or whatever, the game is either public domain or GPL'd with all source assets available as well. So the game will run until we don't run it anymore, at which point everything is released for free.
But what is your goal for how long?
10 years.
10 years. So basically, what you're talking about is people, if they were going to buy this game in general, over 10 years' time, you want them to spend something on the order of $250 on your game.
Yes.
$250 per player over 10 years.
Sure.
Which would translate into something like buying the $50 game 5 times.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, in your opinion, there's no way you could do that in that actual way. Meaning you could not do something where you sold the game up front and they bought an expansion pack every couple of years or something like this. That's not on the table.
No, that doesn't work. That makes the game worse, and it makes the game worse because there's a whole bunch of reasons why it makes the game worse. Let's say you and I play together. It's a team game, right? So we're friends. We play with each other, right? I'm financially able to purchase the game, and you're not, right? Now the game is segregated where you can't play with your friend because one person can purchase the game and one person can't, right? If the game is just completely free for everybody with no all non-cosmetic items are unlocked for everybody at all times, it means that everybody plays the exact same game all the time, and there's no segregation, which you would get with you have to buy the game every 6 months or every year or whatever.
Okay, but so that's switching gears a little bit. That's not really talking about the financial side of things. That's talking about more of the accessibility of this game, yes?
No, I'm just talking about making the best game possible for the people who are playing it. Point of view. Like if we're talking about, my argument is that in this particular situation, doing free to play is the best option for the people who are playing. And I don't. Maybe that's where I'm coming from. Right.
Okay. I'm just saying, put that part of it aside for 1 second. I was trying to just finish off our discussion on the actual payment model. Is there a problem with selling the game that way if you factored out the social aspect that you were starting to bring into it there, where you want everyone to be able to access the game? I was just trying to figure out if there are any other business models that you consider possible, or if you think that literally F2P is the only one that actually works. Because that's sort of more where I thought you were saying before. You were like, subscription's dead, we can't sell this game. And I was like, okay, why can't you sell the game again? Just remind me of why you can't just sell this game.
Okay, though that's why we can't just sell the game. Is because there's ongoing things and we have to run the server and the game's going to be constantly changing, and if we sold the game the way you just said, it segregates the game for different people and your accessibility thing comes up.
But if you don't care about the accessibility, then you could sell the game that way? Or you don't think so?
You could, like you're saying, is it financially viable?
Yeah, in other words, do you feel like there are reasons you couldn't just sell the game as a product that are separate from who you want to be able to access it?
Well, I don't know, but
Okay.
I don't think you can just separate who you want to be able to access it, because those are like let's say you buy the game and 2 years later your buddy wants to play it, John Blow or whatever, he likes it, he finds out about it, he's like, I want to play this game, he buys it, and now you have to pay like $200 to catch up to him or whatever, or pay $50 or whatever after you've already bought it once. Like that's weird, right? Like that, like demanding that people pay money in order to continue playing it, or like separating it so that these are the people who have spent money this quarter or this half year or whatever it is, and these are the people who haven't. That's just weird and probably makes the game worse. And like that just doesn't sound. That sounds like it makes the game worse for players, and I don't think that you can separate that from
Well, hold on.
anything.
I mean, keep in mind though that it's all the same amount of money, right? That we're talking about here. So somebody had to still pay $250 worth of cosmetic hats or something to make it up in your other case, right? In other words, you can't just say like, oh, okay, well, it's weird to charge people for the game that they're actually playing because somehow now it's considered weird, I guess, for people to pay for the game that they're playing. But it's not considered weird that we're expecting the average player to spend $250 buying hats.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you just said, if I may.
Okay. Let's go ahead and say that that's what I said.
Well, tell me how that's not what you said, I guess is more the interesting part. You're saying
Okay,
it's not okay to expect someone to buy this game every 2
Oh,
years
I would love
for
no,
$50.
no. You totally could expect somebody to. I just don't think people are willing to spend it.
No, you said it was weird to say.
I think
you
it's
said that,
weird.
You said.
Yes, I think it's weird. I do think it's weird.
And then it
right?
makes
Like,
the game worse. Those are the two things you said.
yes, and I do think that's true. Take a look at StarCraft 2, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not my favorite game. Quite awful game actually. But every couple of years they come out with a new expansion set, right? And if you don't buy that expansion set, you can't play the game anymore, right? So you've bought a game, you've spent your $60 or whatever, and you wanted to keep playing it. Now you can't play it anymore because no one is playing that version. They're only playing the upgraded version, right? So in order for you to continue playing, you have to pay, right?
Right.
Okay, so that is how that model works, right?
Right.
That's worse for the player, I think.
Okay, why is that worse for the player? That basically means that if you don't want to play this game anymore, you don't pay the developers for the work that they did over the past 2 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that weird? What's so weird about that to you?
Because there's a social pressure because it's a team game and it's a multiplayer game. There's a social pressure of playing with your friends, right? And if your friends are all paying $100 or whatever, they're that's almost forced upon you to continue playing the game. Where if it's free to play, you just don't, right? Like you just don't pay, and you can still play, right? Like
but every person who says that, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody has to buy another $250 worth of hats to cover their non-hat buying.
Yes, that's absolutely true.
And you don't think that's weird?
I do think that's weird.
Okay.
But
you think it's less weird?
Yes. I think it's less. I think it's equally weird, maybe more weird, but
whoa, okay.
But its overall impact on the quality of the game for the average player, if we're concerned about the quality of the game experience for the average player playing, I think the free-to-play model delivers a better quality because you're just going to get more people playing. And the more people playing means the more competitively viable the game is. It means the more the less wait time there is when finding a match, all of these things, right? The more people that are playing, the better the game is, right? So if you say you have to pay, you're alienating people, right? So that's just flat out true. And you're therefore the game quality is going to be suffering. Now, if you alienate people every 6 months or whatever, you're never going to get like your player count is never going to go up. It's only going to continuously go down. And as your player count goes down, the quality of your game goes down. And that would mean that the method that you're saying of pay $50 every 2 years or whatever, you're getting a worse game the longer the game goes on.
Okay, but is that actually true? Meaning that like, so from what you're sort of suggesting, right? If everything that you're saying was actually true, we should have expected League of Legends to be fantastic right now, right? Because right. So why if this model is encouraging this and StarCraft should be a much worse game than League of Legends, right?
It probably is. They're both equally bad.
Okay, they're both equally bad. I haven't played either of them, so I have no idea. I played the original StarCraft, but I haven't played one since then.
Okay.
So I think you're actually talking about StarCraft 2, not StarCraft.
I'm talking about StarCraft 2. StarCraft 1 is a fantastic game.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So StarCraft 2, I don't know. I don't think there is a significant quality difference between StarCraft 2. I mean, there's a quality difference between StarCraft 2 and League of Legends. StarCraft 2 is clearly a much higher. It's made by Blizzard. They know what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
Where Riot, I don't necessarily think they do. So I don't think that there is any correlation between either of these models and quality in the real world.
Okay, so you think they're actually unrelated?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm going to say yes, and if you come back with something where I'm clearly wrong, I'm fully willing to change my mind on this. But yes, for the moment, I'm going to say they're more or less unrelated.
Okay.
I'm saying both models produce, for the most part, crap.
Bad situations, or have
everything produces a bad situation for the most part.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess, like I said, it's to a certain extent. I think most of this is continuously keeps coming back to the fact that I don't realistically know how much argument there is to be had here, because even that statement, right, kind of just says you're almost saying the model is really, it's not even really an argument. It's because it's just like, trust me, I'm going to do something different than everyone else does anyway. So again, we're kind of back to the like, why is this an okay decision? It's an okay decision because I'm not going to mess it up, basically, right?
No, yeah, well, yes, but not just that. Like, I actually think, and I think that it's, from what I've said, it's pretty truthful, I think, that free-to-play actually has the potential to produce, at least the way I want to do it, has the potential to produce a better gaming experience for the average player playing. And I don't think that's true of necessarily any existing free-to-play models, or any existing free-to-play implementations. But I certainly think that that's true for this case. Like, I actually think it will produce a better game, which is why I think it's a totally viable business model.
Well, and you do realize that it does sound a little bit suspicious when you say something like, no existing free-to-play game has ever actually satisfied the criteria that I'm talking about, but I think this new one that I'm going to do won't have the problem. Whereas on the other hand, we do have plenty of examples of people who sell their games who don't have this problem, right?
You have plenty of examples of people who sell their games that have similar, not obviously the same issue, but similar ethical issues, right?
But I'm saying we have positive examples in one case, whereas the case you're talking about, we have no positive examples, is basically what you're saying.
Okay, but that's not a reason to totally throw something away.
It's not, but you have to understand, that's what you're basically saying. So you're saying, we have no evidence that this model works, but I'm still saying, trust me, I'm going to make it work.
No, I think Dota 2 is better off being free to play.
Okay.
I think if Dota 2 charged money for the game, it would be a less good game.
Okay.
I'm not saying that they're doing it ethically, or like 100% ethically. I'm saying that business model makes that game better.
Okay, so you think that, but again, just to get back to the FTP thing, so you're actually saying that you think Dota 2 is an example of a positive F2P game.
Yes, I'm saying that, but I'm not saying that it meets what I would consider my minimum moral or minimum ethical standards or whatever.
Okay, so you have minimum ethical standards, and you don't know of a free-to-play game that meets them.
I don't know of a free-to-play game that meets them. That's true, And I do think that Dota 2 kind of comes close, and I think that Dota 2 is better off being free to play than not being free to play.
Do you know any of examples of games that people just sell, like a traditional game where you buy it, that meet your minimum ethical standards?
Nowadays, yeah, there's plenty of indie games that do.
Okay,
From a
so
big corporation, though, I don't think so.
so just to get back to the just just so we can solidify that one point, so we are at least in agreement that there are no examples of free to play games that meet your ethical standards at all, but there are examples of games that just people buy that do meet your minimum ethical standards.
Yes.
Does that trouble you at all?
No.
Why not?
Because none of the games that meet my minimal ethical standards are multiplayer esport type games that require constant maintenance over time to keep the game good, and constant work on back-end infrastructure and server and all that fun stuff, right? So none of the games have the expenses or the long-term expenses and development costs of one of these games that you do buy and that I consider ethical. So there's a difference there between what the product actually is, right? No game that does what I'm saying with this long-term server stuff and long-term development stuff, no game that does that that's sold in a store is ethical, in my opinion.
Well, I guess just to clarify though, that is an example, or that's an explanation of why you believe you must try the free-to-play model. That is not an explanation of why it doesn't worry you that you have no positive examples of something meeting your minimum ethical bar.
Oh, but I'm saying that I have no positive examples of a game that has its long-term. I'm saying that I have no positive examples of a game that has the long-term requirements that we have that's sold in a store either. There's just no positive examples, period, free to play or not free to play, of games that have this sort of ongoing thing
Are you saying you're saying like literally in the store right now though? I mean, I'm assuming if you look in history, you'd find lots, right? Like, wouldn't Ultima Online or EverQuest, those don't meet that criteria for you?
I think Ultima Online would. I don't know. No, Ultima Online.
How about Guild Wars? Guild Wars doesn't meet that criteria.
They're free to play.
No, I'm talking about in history. So the original Guild Wars was $40 every year or something like that. That was their model. You bought the latest Guild Wars.
Yeah, that would be fine. I would. You know how much more I would prefer to do that, but I don't think I don't think that'll work. I flat out don't. I don't think it'll work, and I don't think it's actually as good for the game.
Okay, so but again, just to get back to the original question.
Yep. No, there are no examples in anything. There are no free-to-play examples that I consider ethically sound. No.
And that does not worry you. That was my question. Why doesn't it worry you? That's
I mean, I guess it does worry. Like we're having this discussion, right? So
okay.
clearly it does worry me.
Okay. All right. So you like are at least you do at least worry about this.
Well, yes. Otherwise, I wouldn't be having this conversation, right?
Okay. All right. So that's good. Okay. So let's move on. I think we've kind of got that under control at least.
All right.
I mean, I feel like, or at least if you have some additional things that you feel like you haven't explored about your thoughts on that part of it, we can go there. But I feel like I've got most of that out.
Yeah, I think that's good. I was confused with
okay.
what were you trying to get there? But yes, okay.
So let me ask a question about the thing that you brought up before, which was you started to say, and it sounded like a lot of what you were sort of talking about in terms of why you don't want to sell the game. You kept saying you think it would make it a worse game. And what it sounded like you kept coming back to was the concept that you would like there to be asymmetric payments on the part of the users, meaning you want it to be the case that some people don't pay for the game and some people pay a lot of money for the game. That is what you were sort of saying, right? Is that a correct statement of what you were saying before about that's a good thing in your mind?
You have to quantify a lot, right? Like I'm not okay with, the people spend $10,000 or whatever on a free-to-play game. Like I'm not okay with that. And we have some ideas about how to alleviate that, such as once you hit a certain amount of expenses for the month. Like one idea that we have is like, let's say $50. We'll just say $50. If you spend $50 for a month, you just get everything unlocked for the rest of the month or whatever. And whatever you paid for, like whatever item you bought, you still get to keep those for future months. But that way, whales won't spend more than $50 a month. Like there's a hard cap on it, right? If you do spend more, you're not getting anything, right? So there are things that I want to do to make sure that that doesn't happen, right? Where people are spending $10,000 or $500 a month, or I don't want a Star Citizen situation. Um, but the asymmetric payment within bounds, I think, is okay. Yeah.
Okay, so basically, what you're saying there is you want a sort of a non-explicit self-balancing market where some people get a service for free because somebody else paid too much for it, right?
If you want to say too much, that's I don't know if too much is fair, but paid
Well,
more
because
for
the
it.
median price, right? This is the cost to everyone to play this game was going to be $2.50 a month or something. You said whatever you said. It was a hypothetical number, right? But
Sure,
some
yeah,
number.
yeah.
So the median cost is going to be $2.50. And so what we're basically saying is some people will get $2.50 worth of game development, and of course we're still not sure about that part. So maybe let's say they're getting $1 or $2 of game development, and 50 cents they're not getting because that's into the cosmetics, right? Because you're saying basically you're allocating these funds in some percentage way. So I don't know, but let's just say it's some reasonable percentage of that. So you're doing the Sean McGrath thing, you're a virtuous person, so out of every $2.50 you're actually spending $2 on developing the game, not cosmetic items or something like this. Let's just say
Sure,
like
sure,
that.
sure.
A good proportion of it.
Yeah, something fair. Okay.
Something because that's pretty high, right? You're only putting 50 cents towards the actual money making part. You're spending $2 on something everyone gets, right?
Well,
So
there's company profit involved too, so it would actually be less than that. But yes.
okay, but it's relatively magnanimous compared to what you could be doing, which is spending, say, 50 cents on the game and $2 on the monetization, right? I mean, you could be, right? That percentage could change wildly, but yeah, whatever it is.
Sure.
So what I'm saying is, for every person who doesn't pay $2.50 a month, right? Someone else has to pay $5 a month, right?
Yep.
So someone else is getting, in terms of gameplay, they're getting still, they're shorted a certain amount on the actual game, but someone else is getting that for free, basically, right?
Yes, but I don't like your usage of the word too much is all. Like you
Okay.
would say above the median is fine, but I think
Yeah.
too much carries too much negative connotation.
Okay. They're paying for. I guess I don't know how to say it. Let's call it a subsidy. They are subsidizing, perhaps we should say, players who are not playing for the game. Because without them, without the people who are paying more for the game, none of the other people would be able to play the game who aren't paying for it right now.
Absolutely.
Right. So that's kind of the idea, right?
Absolutely.
And so this to you think that's a good idea, meaning
Yes.
you think it's good to have a market where basically some people pay more money for something so that other people don't have to pay for that thing. But that is not actually structured in any reasonable way. So meaning the person who doesn't pay $2.50 might have the $2.50, they just decide not to pay it. And the person who pays the $5, that may actually be their last $5. That doesn't actually matter. It's just you like that system in general, irrespective.
Well, I mean, if somebody spends their last $5, there might be, no, I don't like that. But yeah, in general, I mean, I think it's too black and white in the way in which you're framing it, I think,
Okay.
because you're flat out, you're enticing somebody's going to have to spend $100,000 on this so that, 25,000 people or 20,000 people or whatever can get it for free, right? Like that's where you're going with this, and I don't think that's really fair necessarily.
I wasn't going there. I'm actually trying to get you to describe to me what you are thinking of in terms of who pays for what, and is that fair?
Yeah, I do. I think it's totally fair that some people who are willing to and able to subsidize for people who aren't willing or aren't able. Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I mean, I think that if you look at, I mean, this is a grandiose claim or whatever, but I think if you look at any, sorry, I keep shitting on your country, but if you look at any modern,
Oh, I hate my country as much as you do, probably.
all right, well, if you look at any like a modern, reasonable, industrialized nation, they have things like subsidized healthcare and all sorts of subsidies, subsidized childcare, subsidized everything. Where
Yeah.
there is unequal payment. People who are able to pay more. And, I'm not a government. I don't have the ability to enforce people who are able versus people who are
Right.
unwilling, right? So they're the same thing as far as I'm concerned. So, I mean, they're not the same thing as far as the government is concerned, but they're the same thing as far as me as a game developer are concerned, right? So yes, people who are able to pay more do, and people who are less able don't. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. No.
Okay, so yeah, if I could expand on that, because that's what I was assuming was the answer.
Okay.
So I do have a number of problems with that. So the first problem I have with that is I don't think it constructs much of an analogy to socialism, because in socialism you have a system where you actually are, at least trying to be nominally, needs-based, meaning it really actually is trying to assess whether somebody can pay for a thing or not. And the idea behind more of a socialist run system is that we try to make sure that everyone gets this service, and the people who can pay for it pay more for it than the people who can't, right?
Okay.
In your model, that's not true at all, right? Somebody may have lots of money and they just decide not to pay for this game. And then other users who want to see that, let's say we're in hard times, right? It's a question about whether your game's going to stay up and running. A bunch of users who really don't potentially have the money to be spending on this and possibly should be doing something else, like saving for retirement with that money or doing whatever else, right? Mm-hmm. Start buying more items because they want to keep the game afloat, right? There's nothing in the system that you're talking about that actually has a needs component. The only thing that's there is basically a hard cap, which says that literally if this person doesn't physically have any money, obviously they couldn't spend it. But other than that, I don't see anything in your system which actually does ensure that the people who are getting the service and can pay for it actually do.
Yeah, there's not, obviously, right? But I think with the monthly limit, you're not getting the sort of ridiculous whales that you hear about, right? You're not getting the Star Citizen $88,000 for a spaceship thing, right? Like you can't spend more than whatever we decide the monthly cap is. Let's say it's $50. That's high, but let's just say it's $50 because that's probably a reasonable number. So we say if you spend more than $50 this month, you get every item for the rest of the month completely for free. So we've actually implemented a hard cap on what you can spend. So if we do that, then the concern about, like, if you are spending money that you don't have on a video game and you're talking about less than $50 per month, okay, maybe that's bad. Like, clearly that's bad, but I don't think that that's my responsibility at that point if it's capped at such like a reasonable number.
Well, let's talk about the cap then, because that actually brings up another interesting point, right?
Okay.
So the game will go out of business if you keep the cap in place, but it's clear from the data that the game would stay in business if you raise the cap from $50 to $100. Do you raise the cap?
From 50 to 100? No, I don't think so.
So you're going to commit up front to saying that we're going to state a cap and we're never going to change that cap. That cap is fixed.
Yep.
Right. And that'll be
fixed with inflation,
Okay.
Something crazy might happen, right? Who knows?
So basically, like, you're going to be the first F2P game that needs like treasury-backed securities index that you check to see what you can spend on it that month in order to get the items unlocked.
That's precisely it. It'll be adjusted on a day-to-day basis with the CPI.
Okay, all right.
I'm just saying, like in 5 years we might be like, okay, the cap's $75, something like that, because inflation is
right.
Whatever. But yes, that cap would be stated up front.
Okay. Well, wait a minute. It would be stated up front, but could be raised. I'm sorry.
I'm saying that the cap will never be raised, but I'm also saying that, like, if something crazy happens where the U.S. and Canadian dollar just go fucking whack, right, and a dollar now is worth 25 cents, right, then the cap has to be raised in order to account for that. But that would be the only time that the cap would be raised. I wouldn't raise the cap to time that the cap would be raised. I wouldn't raise the cap to keep the company in business, right? I wouldn't do that. I would raise the cap if the dollar is suddenly worth nothing. Okay,
so it's basically like a $50 in gold cap, if that makes like a $50 in gold. Today's $50, however much that buys in gold, that is the cap, or something like that. So that if later it turns out that it's too far off from that, we reserve the right to change the cap to whatever that amount of gold is worth today. Something like that. I
don't think that's exactly how I would phrase it, but yeah, something along those lines.
At least put the merchant system back into somewhere.
Well, gold is completely stupid though, because it's not. Yeah. It's just as arbitrary as currency. So.
Yeah.
Number of chairs made or something by a
Okay.
particular country for a year might be
Okay.
a better index.
So I'm trying to think if there's other avenues that I'd like to explore there. So I mean, I think I've gotten most of the things. Like I've gotten most of sort of the I guess the avenues of it, which is uh, it sounds like there's some things like for example with the cap, there are some things which I feel like you could state upfront and actually codify, right? In other words, we were talking a little bit before. You were saying like if there was some law I could subscribe to that was like don't be a dick, right? I'd do that. So it sounds like maybe there are a few of those things that you could actually do, such as stating that there's a cap that cannot be raised unless inflation goes up by a certain amount or something like this. There
Sure.
are some things, right, you could do if you wanted to. So
Well,
that's
no,
one
that's
thing,
one
right?
that is one that
Yeah,
I'm absolutely going to do. I don't know what the cap is going to
yeah,
be. I'm playing with 50. I don't know what
right,
it's actually going to be.
right.
And the
Whatever
other
it turns out to be, yeah,
right, and the other one, and it'll be something reasonable. It won't, I mean, 50 is kind of unreasonable, but
yeah,
I know how free to play works. It can't be that low.
right.
And that's a downside, but what are you going to do? And then the other
Well,
one
I don't know.
is
What you're going to do is sell the game like a normal person.
I
So
don't
that's why we're having this discussion. Is like, wait, and again, it doesn't bother you that like the cap is $50. So somehow like 12 months, someone pays $50, so $600 a year for this game, and you're like, nah, it's fine.
I mean, yes, it's fine.
Okay,
That's like that will make the game better for more people. So
okay,
yes, it's fine. But the other thing was all assets, code, everything goes into either GPL or public domain once the servers go off and development stops.
right,
That's
okay.
another thing that's like this is
Something that can be codified. Yeah, like
yes,
it can be in a
exactly.
contract as opposed to just like trust me.
Exactly, yeah. And
Yeah,
like anything that we can do to be like this is, we're trying to be as ethical as possible here, and I'm only doing this, and I seriously, like, legitimately am. The only reason I'm doing this is because I actually think it is the best for the game. And if we were 5 years ago when people were spending money, or 10 years ago when people were spending money on subscription games, I wouldn't want to do free to play,
yeah.
even if it made even if it made like astronomically more money, right? Like I don't care. That's not why I'm doing this, right? I'm doing it because I'm trying to make the best game possible, and I think in this case, free to play is actually going to deliver that.
And so, if that's actually true, that in the past you would have been okay with a subscription model, right?
Hmm.
Is there going to be a subscription model that people can elect to use?
Yeah, the $50 a month thing.
So $600 a year is the subscription.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's kind of unreasonable, wouldn't you say?
No. I mean, unreasonable from what point of view?
From the point of view that whatever the game is that you're developing with the 30 people that you have or whatever, that you would have sold for $60 a year or whatever
It's
it
not the
was.
same game. That's the difference, though. It's not the same game.
It
If it's
is
sold,
exactly the same
it
game.
is absolutely not the same game. If it's sold for $60, we have fewer people playing it. If we have fewer people playing it, we don't have the data to make the game as good. If we don't have the data to make the game as good, you're not getting as good of a game. It won't be as competitively viable. It won't be as good. We don't have the money to run the servers to constantly improve everything. That money doesn't exist,
So what
right?
you're saying, but okay, so what you're saying is it's the game is worth 10 times more money as a result.
Yeah, yeah, easily.
Easily 10 times more money.
It's worth zero. It's worth infinitely more because without enough people playing it to gather data to make the game competitively viable, the game is worth zero.
How many people is that?
100,000.
100,000 people.
Yeah.
So you don't think you could sell a game to 100,000
No.
people?
No.
Okay.
You know what? I probably could. I don't think I'm comfortable enough. I don't have the money.
Okay.
I just don't have the money to pay for a game that has to be developed in that way.
Well, how
If
are
you
you
re
going to develop the game to begin with then? I mean, how are you going to get this free to play revenue to start coming in without the money to do the upfront development to make the game with art and stuff? I
complicated. It involves government grants, and government grants like free to play, and
Oh,
free to
really?
play, yeah, and free to play allows us to release the game immediately. crappy versions, like, beta, alpha, pre-alpha, like whatever Greek letter you want to associate with it. Some really awful version of the game, like, have you seen my stream? Like what I've been working on with like a triangle flying around? Like we could just release that,
I
right?
did see the triangle flying around, yes.
And well, there you go. We can release the triangle flying around, right?
Actually, I think it wasn't flying around yet when I saw it, but it was there.
Oh, well, it flies now.
Okay. I'm
Um,
gonna check that out.
yeah, it's great. So, like, we can release that now, or as soon as we have our dedicated server up, which should be in the next couple of weeks. So, like, we can release that game and it's available, and like people can start talking about it, and people can start playing it now, right? And we can slowly bring in free to play stuff once the game is pretty good. Like, I'm not even worried about like actually producing cosmetics or any of that stuff until there's actually like a good game there, right? But if we can get people playing it now for completely for free, under the assumption like we're not hiding the fact that we're doing free to play, we're not hiding what we're going to do, we're being pretty transparent about it. That's why I'm having this discussion too, right? So we're not operating, people aren't getting the game under the assumption that it's going to be free forever for everybody. People are, if they're going to play the game now, they're operating under the assumption it's going to be free to play at some point. So we couldn't release this game for free and then have people like pay $60 for it at some arbitrary time, right? Where we can roll in free to play stuff earlier than we could sell it for $60, for example, and use that to fund the development of the game.
I see. Well, I mean, there are plenty of examples of that sort of thing, though. For like, I mean, Prison Architect would be a classic example of that, right?
I don't know how much money it made in early access or whatever it was.
It's like 1.4 like million units or something now. If you look at it, it's insane how many there were. It was some ridiculously huge number.
Yeah, Nuclear Throne did 110,000 or something like that. Good for them. I mean, I don't know how they do it.
Well, but again, so I'm just asking the question a little more rhetorically. It seems like we do have lots of examples of ways that you actually can do that.
Well,
so I don't know that I necessarily believe that somehow the F2P part is meant to, you're saying government grants, but like, okay, I mean, if magically you can get government grants, then, I mean, all bets are off. It's like if the government comes in and says everyone has to do free to play, then obviously they win. They're the government. You can't fight the government. So I'm not going to argue against that. But
that's not exactly how it works.
If you take that out of the equation for a second and assume that you have to come up with this as a viable business model in general, free to play doesn't get an advantage there. You still have to find the money somewhere to make the game.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it being free to play makes finding the money easier, and I think it makes finding the money easier, and then it sort of transitions nicely from the hey, we're finding the money to hey, we actually have a game that's like a production level, finished, polished game or whatever. Like it.
So do you have some examples of that? Because I can point out lots of examples of people who did like early access or Kickstarters and had very successful products. Do you have an example of some small indie developer that started an F2P game with a triangle or whatever else and somehow was able to fund themselves the whole time until they got a game with some art in it or whatever?
No,
I don't know of any of that.
I don't know of any of that either.
So why are you saying that you think that would be effective? Why are you saying you think that would be... What makes you think that strategy is going to work at all?
The government grants.
What do these grants say regarding free to play? I'm very curious now. This is not part of the argument, but I'm just curious now.
Nothing specifically about like it has to be free to play, but it's like, what's your business model? These are the business models that have been accepted in the last couple of years, right? Like Dyad was funded by the Ontario government as well, but at that time, free to play, I guess Zynga was around, but like it wasn't valued that high. But now it's like free to play is pretty big.
Okay, and these government grants would not accept. We are doing some other thing like what Prison Architect did or whatever.
Oh, they would accept them, but it's a question of how much like each basically it's a long like 100-page application. Each section of the application gets weighted differently. It gets applied like a score to it, and then those scores are weighted, and the score for business model or the weight for business model is quite high, and free to play score is very high on that.
That's pretty terrifying, Sean. Separate from this discussion.
Hey man, Canada.
That's pretty terrifying.
Welcome to Canada.
It's my turn to rag on your country. That is a really stupid idea.
Did you see our new prime minister?
No.
He's pretty good looking.
Oh really?
Oh yeah.
All right.
He's a hottie.
Okay. Good. We elect actors here, so there's no reason you can't go for cosmetics.
Yeah, there you go.
If we can elect Ronald Reagan, you can elect whoever you want, I feel like.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't feel like I have any other specific things that I wanted to ask about. Um, I mean, I feel like again, I certainly haven't heard anything that would make me less nervous about it as a business model because as far as I could tell, most of the things I was concerned about, it wasn't that you weren't concerned about them, it's that you're just like, I'm not going to do them, right? That kept being kind of the answer was like, I'm not going to spend my time trying to figure out how to get people to buy cosmetics. I'm just not like. And so the fact that you may be worried that all of the incentives are for me to spend my time figuring out how to make this game be a game where people want to buy cosmetics, I'm just not going to do it, right?
Well, that's not true. I'm going to do some of that. Like I said, like
I'm not going to do it to its detriment.
Oh no, no, of course not.
Or whatever,
yes.
right?
Yes.
So I guess what I was saying before is like I don't feel like I've been assuaged very much because it sounded like the entirety of the argument that the F2P is not going to be a problem here all boiled down to I'm not going to do the bad stuff, right?
Well, no,
like,
I don't think so. I don't think that's true.
All right.
Because one of the arguments that I was making is that free to play is actually the best solution, and I was talking about getting the large number of people to play it, and lining up payment with development, right?
But again, that's about why you think it's going to be a good model for this game. What I'm saying is that the concerns I have about free to play were not assuaged in any way other than, trust me, I won't do the things you're worried about.
Okay, well, what about this, though? Okay, you could say that the business model choice for a particular game is... How do I phrase this? The business model choice for a particular game, it can be a wide variety of things, and all of them have a direct impact on the quality of the game, or a different way of putting it is they have a direct impact on the quality of the experience that the average game player will have, right? You buy a game up front, you're going to get this experience, right? You're going to get this experience that has some quality value associated with it. You pay a subscription model, and you're going to have this experience, and it has a quality value associated with it. Same with free to play, right? I think in this situation, in my situation, free to play delivers the best quality experience to the average player, and not just like the median player, but like to like across the whole spectrum, it's the best for everybody, except for I guess the people who are spending $600 a year or whatever. But for the vast majority of players, free to play is going to produce a better experience for them. So in that regard, I think that's pretty unique amongst free to play games. I don't think that's necessarily the case anywhere except for perhaps Dota.
Well, hold on a second though. Again,
okay.
That really has nothing to do with if someone comes to this and goes, I find when I play all this F2P stuff, it's really annoying. It's always trying to trick me into buy something. It's giving me the Christmas crate that I have to pay $1 to unlock. They've got economists who are trying to figure out how to sell me the most number of goods. Like they're coming to it with all of the concerns because they've played all these free-to-play games and legitimately they have seen a lot of stuff about these games that they don't like, right?
Yeah.
They're coming to you and they're saying, those are my concerns, and your answer is not that don't worry about it because, we have these ways in which we know it won't happen. You're just saying, we won't do those things to you.
Well, I've given you two things that
So there's the cap, right? At $50 a month is $600 a year, which is like not that much of a cap, but okay.
Well,
right?
we haven't said it's 50, but...
But you even said the phrase, too, that you can't go very low because, quote-unquote, you know how free-to-play games work, and it can't go that low.
It can't go that low.
Right? So
you're right. It's probably $50.
You're already saying it looks like a nasty distribution where a bunch of people carry all the weight and a bunch of people don't or whatever, and that's, okay, whatever. But point being, we've established that part.
Mm-hmm.
And there really wasn't anything else. There was the fact that you won't shut down the servers without releasing the source code, but that doesn't affect what happens while the game's actually commercial, right? So what were the other things that were supposed to make me believe that it was the Christmas crates all over the place and everything else?
The fact that I did say that I would like to codify something where either percentages of development or things like that. But you're absolutely right in that. I think what it comes down to, what you're saying is it creates a massive power imbalance between the consumer and the developer, right? Like the person who's paying the money has very little power in what happens with the thing that they're paying for, right? So you're paying $10 a month or whatever.
Well, it's also adversarial, I guess is the other part, meaning you, in order for you to survive, you must convince me to spend money on the game. That's just a basic tenet of how this is going to go. So, you know, what you see when you look at these other companies is that they do exactly that. Like, that's what Zynga's all about. They're like trying to figure out every possible way to manipulate me into paying this money, right? And
Yeah.
so when I come to your game, it's like, why? How do I know that you're not going to go down that route? And I guess what I'm saying is, I haven't heard anything other than, trust me, I'm a nice guy, which may be
Right.
true, but it doesn't really help actually anyone who doesn't necessarily know who you are or doesn't necessarily know who your business partners are or what will happen, right?
No, you're absolutely right. And I don't know what the solution to that is. If you know, if you want to help me come up with one, or if you can come up with one, I'd fucking love to hear it, right? But that isn't something that I think I can tackle, right? Like I can't tackle the, hey, we're gonna fix free to play across the board and make it an ethical business model, right? That I don't know. I don't have a solution to. But what I do have a solution to, I think, is that free to play can be applied pragmatically to a situation that benefits everybody. And it actually becomes the best option, not the option that we're using because we're trying to exploit people and make a lot of money. I think it actually can be the best option for making a particular type of game. This probably is the only type where ongoing competitive blah blah blah. So my argument isn't that free to play is great, everybody should do it. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that free to play is awful. However, in this one isolated situation, or maybe there's others that I haven't thought of, but in this particular isolated situation, free to play serves the game, the players, and the developers better than any other business model.
Right. And so again, that's true of most of the esports free to play things, correct? Meaning that is the
No.
same statement you would make about them. It's just that they didn't choose to optionally be ethical when they applied it. But all the things you're saying were right. In other words, League of Legends, what you just said applies. That if what you're saying is correct, that free to play is the best model for these types of games, then they chose the best model, right?
No, that's not. I'm not saying that free to play is the best model for these type of games. I'm saying that free to play is the best model for my particular goals, which is to make a competitively viable, high quality game that has lots of people playing it in order to get competitive viability. That's what I'm saying. That's not Riot's goal.
Okay,
So,
so for the goal, it's not about the type of game, it's just the
no,
goal.
it's the goal, but the type of like the goal implies a certain type of game, right? Like it has to have an online, it has the servers, matchmaking, ELO, blah blah blah, right? Like it has to have all of those features, and it has to have ongoing development with gathering tons of statistics about item combinations and hero combinations and blah blah blah, in order to figure out what is balanced and what is imbalanced and how to balance it and all that sort of stuff. All of that stuff is required to make the best, most competitive possible team game, which is what my goal is. So for that goal, I think
Right.
free to play serves it best, and that's not Riot's goal, clearly.
Okay, so what's the difference between you and Riot?
Our
Other-
goals.
Right. Which gets me exactly back to what I'm saying. So,
That's a pretty significant difference.
no, it's all just about what your motivation is, right? And whether or not you're going to be ethical as a person. It has nothing to do, the game itself is the same kind of game, right? It's the same kind of game, same kind of business model. Everything else is the same. All you're saying is, I won't do what Riot does. Trust me, right?
No, I'm saying I won't do what Riot does because that's not even like that's not a goal. That's not a goal. Like
But
that's
what a
not
person,
why I'm
that's,
doing this.
That's what ethics are, right? Goals and ethics, there's no difference. What you're trying to do is your ethics. That's the definition of what it is, right? It's like,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
I mean, there's no, just because you're calling it a goal, it doesn't make it any different. It's still a thing in your head that you're telling us to trust you about, right?
Oh, I do think that there's definitely the element of, hey, I know everything is evil, but trust me, I'm not
Yeah.
evil. There is definitely that, and I don't know what I can do to get around that. But what I'm saying is that I'm not starting from the position where Riot or Zynga or whoever else is starting from, right? Like those making a whole bunch of money is zero. I have zero interest in that, right? Like that's not even like tangentially a goal. That's like I don't even care. So that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it, if it's altruistic reasons or whatever. It's not. It's practical reasons, right? I want to do free to play for practical reasons. I think it is the actual best model in this situation. And if you think that if you just say, well, because your goal is different and what you want to do is different, that's irrelevant, and it still boils down to trust me, which I guess is what your argument is. Is that true?
Well, my argument is a little more specific than that, right? Because in general, since we're trying to talk about a business model as the core, gravamen of the argument, right? It's like the thing we're talking about is the business model, not Sean McGrath. Like, if the argument was, is Sean McGrath a good person or not, then I agree that all of these things are relevant because that's what we're actually talking about. But in this case, we're talking about specifically the business model and what the hazards of that business model are to a developer, right?
Okay.
And the argument that I, again, keep coming back to that I think you seem to be consistently making is that you're saying that those hazards aren't a problem because you won't fall prey to them, right? And I guess what I keep trying to just make sure that we've solidified is the fact that that is actually where we're landing. Meaning, we're not trying to say that these hazards aren't still all there for your game, because they all are. It's just that you don't think you will fall prey to them.
Yeah, I think that they're all
sense?
there. Yes, that makes perfect sense, and I think that that's a fair assessment. And I'm not saying that I'm not going to fall prey to them. I'm going to say that I'm going to try really hard not to, right? But like anything that can be done up front to be like this is the framework in which I'm operating, and I can't overstep. Like if there's like a legal thing that I could be like, this is what I'm willing to do, and anything outside of this is off the table completely. I'm totally willing to do that. I totally would like to do that. And if I could come up with a way of doing that so that other developers could also do it, that would be good. Because I don't think free to play is bad inherently. I think every implementation of it is bad, and the fact that there's the power imbalance or whatever, all that shit is bad. But the actual idea that the game is free and some people have the option to pay for it, that little fundamental nugget there, I think is fine. It's just everything that's surrounding it, everything that's like been branched off of that little tiny idea has been awful and entirely by financial motivations, right? And I don't think that it has to be. But I don't have a concrete solution to that problem. Like I'm not saying this is how we're not going to do that, right? Like I don't have that because there's so many ways in which you could be enticed to just be evil, right?
Right.
And I don't have a solution for all of them. And part of it is, yeah, just trust me. But anything that I can do to be like, hey, you don't have to just trust me. There is like a thing that I'm signing here or whatever that says I will only operate within these parameters. I think that would be a really positive thing, and I'd be I totally want to do that, right? Because I do want to do this free to play in order to best serve the people playing the game. And that's sort of my point of view.
Well, let me throw out some options for you then.
Sure.
See what you think of them.
Let's hear them.
So, if you really want to do this altruistically, right, one could imagine that you have some budget for this game that is what you think the development costs are from year to year, right? Where you're basically saying that, like, we need to run the servers and that's going to cost X dollars per user or something, probably it's a more difficult calculation than that. But we have some appears like to support this many users in this many countries, we know it's going to cost this much money. We want this many artists working on the game, optimally for the stuff that we want to roll out, blah, blah, blah. Separate from free to play. So meaning assuming that the game was just going to be purchased flat, or the Canadian government was going to come in with some crazy grant called the Sean McGrath Support Grant, which just pays for you to make the game, right?
Call them up and tell them we want that.
Yeah. I would, by the way, also like the Casey Muratori, I'm not Canadian, but I'd be willing to be for this grant, right? That would also be fine.
You could probably get it.
So what about a system that worked a little bit more like, say, Wikipedia, right? Where it's like, okay, the game will be free to play in a year where we did not raise the target amount the previous year.
So you're saying
if your players give you enough money
through which
everyone
method?
Through just like whatever you want. It could either be if it's free to play that year where they're buying stuff, if they buy enough stuff to pay the next year's budget, it just completely the next year, it completely unlocks for everybody or something like this. Or it's just there's a donation drive, and if the donation drive hits the development cost, they don't do free to play. Penny Arcade did this, for example, for ad free for their site.
Yeah.
And in fact, Valve does something like this sort of with the compendium, except they still just try to make as much money on everything else as they can too. But
no, they make so much money off that compendium.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
So in other words, imagine something like the compendium, where every year you have a compendium, and if enough people buy it to pay for whatever is the set development goal, so your company profit that you feel is an ethical amount to make, plus your development costs, then the next year doesn't have the free to play. Everyone just gets the whole game.
Well, that's intriguing. Okay, so let's see. Why is that good? Why is that bad? I mean, I'd have to think about it for a while. That seems like good on the surface, right? Like, that doesn't seem like there's anything wrong with that. One problem with it is it only covers 1 year, right? And you have to think a little bit more long term for things like this. So, we could have some contingency built into that where we have to go 30% over or something like that, so that we can something like that would probably have to be done. Let's see. Okay, another problem is, I'm just throwing this out as an idea as why it might not be good. Let's say we have 12 artists on staff. We actually need 7 to do the game content, right? What do we do with these other 5, right? Do we fire them because they're only needed for free to play stuff, and then do we have to bring them back a year later if we don't make it for the next year, right? Like, there's kind of a staffing logistics issue here.
Well, my
that
assumption
I don't think
would be that you'd be paying for all of those people. So in other words, you have the team that you have, and you're going to
But we don't need them all.
No, it's not need. They're in the budget, meaning if the compendium thing succeeds in a given year, then that next year, that whole team is still doing all the other stuff. They're still making the free-to-play items, just everyone gets them.
Oh, I see.
So in other words, there's no difference to you. You're running exactly the same way. It's just a total cap on the sort of the it's not even a cap really, because people can keep giving you money. They can keep buying the compendium if they just want to give you money, right?
Yeah.
But it's basically like it's a bar that's like, if you go above this, we won't try to do any more selling you stuff for the period of time that compendium covers.
Shit, why not just take it a little further? Why not just say it's free to play up until we meet some amount of money? Maybe that happens in February or the second month of the year or whatever. And then after that, everything's just free for everybody.
Yeah.
Why not just do that?
I don't know. Why not?
I don't know. That's a good idea. We should just do that.
All right. Because
like, I mean, I don't know. I'd have to think about it, right? Like, I'm sure there's some downsides to it, but like, that sounds like a fantastic idea.
Because it seems like that also helps mitigate some of these problems, because then it's like, you're not in a position where you're thinking about how to always grow and how to always make more money. You're just like, we know what we want to do with the game this year. We'd like to focus on development. If our fans let us do that, we do. And we won't be thinking about, how do we do all these other things. If they don't, then all right, like, we're back in kind of the F2P nastiness. That's just where we are.
Okay, so why I really like this idea is because it actually does all the good things that free-to-play does with all the things that I talked about, and makes it even better, right? It's even better because now it's like, hey, and now you don't even have to buy anything. Now it's like you don't have to do anything.
Right.
Like, you just have absolutely everything for free. Nothing is segregated at all.
Right.
And there's no pop-ups anywhere about buying shit. Like, it's just complete. Like, I like it. I like this idea a lot. Yeah, okay. I'll probably do this.
Okay. Well, honestly, that
it's still free to play, though.
Yeah, that probably would go a long way towards my sort of comfort level with the game, because then, to me, that puts in sort of, like I said, a little more codification of the trust me, I actually want to develop the game, not the free to play. Because now you're telling me up front that if, as fans, we pay you the money you actually wanted, you'll just work on the game and you won't care about this other stuff. And that gives me the option as a customer to potentially get what I actually want, which is you just working on the game and not the
I
apps,
would totally prefer that too.
So that gives them that option. And so that to me is a pretty big that's a pretty big positive to me if you come out and you do something like that.
Yeah, I would totally do that. Now, it would have to be a little bit more involved in what you're saying, right? Like, because I said, there's the contingency of running.
The devil's in the details, and so on.
But there's also, like, we want to expand to do another game or whatever, and part of the money has to whatever, right? There's going to be
Yeah.
some details to it, but like having that cap where it's like, hey, if we go over 10 million or 20 million or whatever our development budget is, whatever number we set, and I mean,
Right.
it can be arbitrary and it can be stupidly high for, we could still be evil in that regard too,
Yes.
right? But let's say we're not. Like now we have one point of not being evil, right? Where we have like a clear, like, hey, difference between 10 million and $100 million is pretty obvious to people, right? So we can be like, okay, whatever our cap is, it's $10 million or whatever. And we say, if you hit this cap, everything is just free for the rest of the year. Yeah, I have absolutely no problem doing that.
Well,
I think that's a fantastic idea.
that seems like a pretty positive thing to me because again, that sort of, I guess when I look at the two problems that I see with what you're talking about from I'm now thinking of it as a selfish perspective instead of me thinking about it as like I'm arguing F2P for people in general, trying to bring up points that maybe they would make, which is what I was doing before. Thinking of it as a selfish person, let's say I actually want to play this game. So for some reason I get into esports. So when I said before I don't care about esports, I just wake up one day and I'm like, I need esports in my life. And
You do need esports in your life, by the way.
and I want to play your game, right? Or your game's one of the games I'm considering, right?
Sure.
When I look at that, there's two things that bother me. One is that thing that's like, I want the game. Like, I want to play, I want to know that somebody made a game and I'm getting the game. I don't want to get, this weird shape of the game, which is like it didn't have the hats and I don't have the weird, I just want the game. I want you to make a game and I want to have the game, right?
You don't want to get a store with a game inside of it.
I just want the game, right? And so
Right.
that alleviates that concern. Like, okay, if we're paying this developer enough money, they'll just give us the game. I like that, right? That's good.
Sure. I like that too.
The thing I don't like is there is no way really for me to pay a fair price for the whole game because, like you said, that's going to end up being $600 a year, which is pretty darn high. So if as fans we don't hit your cap, an individual can't really rectify their situation at a fair price, which I don't see much of a way around that because, like you said, the whole point of this model is that it's lopsided. So it kind of falls apart if you say, "Oh, I'll just charge you what the fair market value would have been of that thing." It doesn't work.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Right.
But my point is that you're getting you're getting a different game. Right? Like if you do that, you have fewer people playing it, you have less data, you have less it's a different game, right? You're
Right.
not you're not getting the same game, so I don't think it's fair to compare them.
Well, I'm not necessarily saying it's fair to compare them or not. It's just saying, as a person, I can't pay what anyone would ever consider a fair price for a game because a game is like 60, 70 bucks or something like this, and actually get the game that was made for the same development budget, by the way, that would have gone into, say, Call of Duty, which I can buy for $60, right? So I'm just saying that, like, from that perspective, it doesn't. There's no way to turn it on an individual basis into the I just bought the game version. But
No, I don't think there
right.
is.
And so
we
that's
don't have the
unfortunate.
market. We don't have the upfront development
Yeah,
budget.
there's no way to do it. At least I can't think of it. The other
If I
one
had
I
$100
thought
million,
of,
like
yeah.
Treyarch, what's the company that makes
Yeah, Treyarch. Well, there's actually don't they have multiple studios? I think they alternate for Call of Duty, right?
I think they stopped because it was Infinity Ward and Treyarch, and then I think it's just Treyarch now. I don't know.
Oh,
Whatever.
right, okay.
Either way, I
I don't
don't have
either.
their development budget,
No,
so I
nobody
can't do
does.
that. Right, so we can't. That's not even an option, right?
All right. Well, okay. I think I might be done. I think that's it. I think I said everything I had to say. I feel
So
like
you would play this game under that condition.
So I think what I would say is, I don't know how to alleviate one problematic piece, which is that that cap could be set unreasonably high so as to ensure that it basically never happened, right? And I don't know how you fix that, really, right? Because, I mean, you could try to put something up front that's sort of like your peg to the price of gold thing we were talking about before, where you're like, oh, the cap is $50 and it's pegged to inflation or something. One could imagine that, like, oh, the cap every year for the global cap is set to $10 million to inflation, or, you had something. I could maybe see that, but even so, it's still very hard. I don't know that one. So there is kind of a little nasty loophole where it's like, well, the developer could always still decide in any given year to just basically screw me as a customer if they wanted to. And I don't know the way around that. But in general, assuming that price was set fairly and was set to a reasonable development budget plus profit, yeah, I think I could be okay with that. And, if that were the model, I think I could at the very least say I'd be much more okay with that than F2P.
Yeah, I would totally.
Right.
I think that's a great idea. Like because it doesn't hurt any of the things that I want to do, right? Like I still get to do everything that I want to do. I don't get to make a stupid, ridiculous amount of money, but I didn't want to do that anyway, right? So it's like this seems to be, at least, for the 10 minutes that I've heard of this idea, this seems to be reasonably,
Yeah.
it seems you're getting it. You're getting a different game, right? Like if you do that, you have fewer people playing it, you have less data, you have less. It's a different game, right?
Right.
You're not getting the same game, so I don't think it's fair to compare them.
Well, I'm not necessarily saying it's fair to compare them or not. It's just saying, as a person, I can't pay what anyone would ever consider a fair price for a game, because a game is like 60, $70 or something like this, and actually get the game that was made for the same development budget, by the way, that would have gone into, say, Call of Duty, which I can buy for $60, right? So I'm just saying that, like, from that perspective, it doesn't, there's no way to turn it on an individual basis into the I just bought the game version. But
No, I don't think there
right.
is.
And so
We don't
that's
have the market.
unfortunate.
We don't have the upfront development
Yeah,
budget.
there's no way to do it. At least I can't think of it. The other
If I
one
had
I
$100
thought
million,
of, but,
like Triarch, what's the company that makes
yeah,
Treyarch?
Treyarch. Well, there's actually don't they have multiple studios? I think they alternate for Call of Duty, right?
I think they stopped because it was Infinity Ward and Treyarch, and then I think it's just Treyarch now. I don't know.
Oh,
Whatever.
really? Okay.
Either way, I
I don't
don't have
either.
their development budget,
No,
so
nobody
I can't
does.
do that. Right. So we can't. That's not even an option, right?
All right. Well, okay. I think I might be done. I think that's it. I think I said everything I had to say. I feel
So
like
you would play this game under that condition.
So I think what I would say is, I don't know how to alleviate one problematic piece, which is that that cap could be set unreasonably high so as to ensure that it basically never happened, right? And I don't know how you fix that, really, right? Because, I mean, you could try to put something up front that's sort of like your peg to the price of gold thing we were talking about before, where you're like, oh, the cap is $50 and it's pegged to inflation or something. One could imagine that, like, oh, the cap every year for the global cap is set to $10 million to inflation, or, you had something. I could maybe see that, but even so, it's still very hard. I don't know that one. So there is kind of a little nasty loophole where it's like, well, the developer could always still decide in any given year to just basically screw me as a customer if they wanted to. And I don't know the way around that. But in general, assuming that that price was set fairly and was set to a reasonable development budget plus profit, yeah, I think I could be okay with that. And if that were the model, I think I could at the very least say I'd be much more okay with that than F2P.
Yeah, I would totally.
Right.
I think that's a great idea. Like
So,
because it doesn't hurt any of the things that I want to do, right? Like I still get to do everything that I want to do. I don't get to make a stupid, ridiculous amount of money, but I didn't want to do that anyway, right? So it's like this seems to be, at least for the 10 minutes that I've heard of this idea, this seems to be reasonably,
yeah.
it seems reasonable. It seems like a good place to start at least. And I don't see a problem with that. Like I think that that's probably a good idea.
Well, yeah, then that's pretty cool because, again, like I said, from a selfish perspective, one of the things that I mostly am concerned about is I want to be able to just buy the game, and I also want a way to free the developer from having to think about this aspect of it. And
Okay, I'd
so,
love to not have to
right?
think about it.
Yeah, and so I feel like that is the part where the progress can be made. If you can move away from, if free to play is the fallback for the business model, there's a big difference between that and free to play is the business model.
Well, do you
Right?
think, but do you think it's a fallback, like compendium type thing, or do you think it's, hey, it's just free to play until we hit as much money as we need? At that point, everything is free.
What
Like
I would
we don't have a special event like compendium or whatever. It's just January 1st rolls around, it's free to play until we make $10 million or whatever it is.
So here's what I would probably say, and I'd have to think about this a little more because I came up with this idea literally just as we were talking. It wasn't like I
Yeah.
had time to think about it either. But what I would probably say is, again, as a player, what I want from you is I want not free to play. I want to pay you $60 and get my game. That's what I wanted, right?
Right.
So what I would suggest is, how do you make this system into something that looks a lot like that? Meaning at the beginning of the year, if all of us can go and just say, okay, you said like $24 a year was what you wanted to make from us or something, right?
Yeah.
If everyone paid whatever the amount is to get up to that number, right, then the game is free. So maybe there's something like, okay, there's just like a contribution thing, or you at the beginning of the year there's the thing you can buy, which is like, I'm trying to get us towards this goal, or maybe you get a little badge if you spend over the amount that you were supposed to. Something that's like designed to allow everyone to come together and try to make the game free. And if they fail, then they fail. Like another example would be you pay this much money into the game and you just get that many credits for free to play items throughout the year if the thing fails. So we can all pile on and try to like buy the thing, right? And if we don't make it, then I just get that many items or something. But, you know, I don't know.
Is that actually like functionally better than just flat? It's free to play until we hit a certain revenue, and then it's free for everybody. Like, is that actually better? I don't know.
Well, I want some way to do this before it turns free to play. So if, as players, we want to do it, we don't have to actually ever have the free to play version.
Okay.
So yes, I mean, I like what you're saying. It's just I want a way to make it so that if players want to keep this game an actual game and not a piecemeal game, so that they never have to have a day where that's not true.
I'm sorry. I want a piecemeal game.
Yeah, in other words, like what basically would happen, right, is that I'm playing the game and I have the whole game. And then on January 1st, my game goes back to like only the pieces of the game, right? You know what I'm saying? Like I don't get all my hats are all gone. Right?
Your hats are gone, but the functional parts of the game are still there.
Right. But the hats are all gone, right?
Okay, sure.
So what I'm saying is, if as players we just want our hats to always be there,
Yeah.
I want a way in December to get to that goal for you, so that in January it doesn't have to happen. Whereas if it has to go back to free to play and then we have to earn our way back up to it starting then, it's kind of like there's no way for the players to ensure that that never happens. And furthermore, there's no way for them to signal too early. They can't tell you in June that they want the game free next year. And so you, as a developer, have to be thinking, it's getting close to December. I don't know what's going to happen. We better have a bunch of F2P stuff ready. We got to, like you're constantly. So I want a way. I want the players, if they take initiative, to be able to move it backwards in time to a place where it's keeping you totally out of the F2P thing if they do it. That's all. So I don't know how to achieve that, but that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, that's understandable. I think that's. I don't think it's a bad idea. I don't know if it's.
Yeah.
I don't know what the right answer is.
Neither.
Like I heard of
Me
this.
neither.
I heard of this like 30 seconds
Yeah.
after you heard of it.
Yeah.
So, but no, I think this is a good direction. Like I think that this totally meets. This meets what my goals are, right? And if it's free to play as a backing, that's fine too.
All right.
But it's still like free to play. Like even if this happens,
Yes.
it's still free to play.
Yes.
By the actual definitions of those three words.
Yes. And I mean, like I said, free to play, one of the things with it is like, I guess from the perspective of somebody who doesn't like free to play, it's like, why don't I like free to play, right? The answer is because all the free to play stuff has all of these bad manipulative properties to it. And so someone saying, trust me, that won't happen, is not particularly compelling, right? But that doesn't mean that I don't believe that you couldn't figure out a thing that is slightly different from free to play that actually creates a business model where that doesn't happen, right? And so that's why I'm saying like that's kind of an interesting thing to me, because like, okay, maybe it won't work, but at least now there's a reason you're trying something different where I'm like, okay, maybe now I can have some confidence in you because you're not doing exactly the same business model. There's a difference here, and maybe that'll work. Maybe that will start to produce developers who aren't being manipulative, right? And
I would like to do this just for that experiment alone.
Yeah.
Just to see if other people would be.
Yeah, I mean, who knows, right?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think I'm going to do this. This is what I'm going to do. This is a really good idea. I think I'm just going to do that instead.
Help.
Well, thanks. No. But yeah, no, I mean, it's still free to play, right? Like, it's still like at its core free to play, and it meets all the goals that I have and why I wanted to do free to play in the first place.
Well, so I guess, Sean, do you have any other stuff that you want to talk about? I mean, did we cover everything you wanted to cover? I asked the questions I had. I pressed on the places that seemed pressy.
Yeah, I think so.
How do you feel about it? So
I think it's good. Like, I think it more or less it covered all the points. Did I at least convince you in any way, separate from the thing that we just just stumbled upon?
Yes.
That because it's always been my assumption, and perhaps I'm projecting my assumption upon you as well, that free to play is never good ever for the game or for the players, right? Like there's no example except for perhaps Dota where free to play is actually better for the game and for the players playing. And it's always been my assumption that that's just flat out true. Free to play is always worse. But I don't now. I've now come to the point where I don't think that's true anymore. I don't think free to play is necessarily worse. Have you? Do you still feel, or do you ever feel that it's always, without a doubt, absolutely worse in all situations?
Well, I guess what I would say is I think that even the premise of that question it sort of presupposes that I don't like free to play for reasons which are actually not the reasons I don't like free to play, right? I don't dislike free to play because of some inherent fundamental aspect of the business model of it. The reason I fundamentally don't like free to play is because the incentives do not align, as I explained before. And my assumption is that since all of the evidence of free to play we have show that those incentives actually are totally followed exactly the way you would think they were, I just assume that is what happens when you are talking about a large game, something like you're talking about where it's, millions of dollars on the line, that those incentives, that's what they produce, right? That's the evidence I see. I can look at the business model and go, that's what the incentives are. So it's not surprising that this is what happened. So it's not that I don't like free to play because there's something that I see in like the aspect of paying for a hat that's bad, right? It's not like, oh, why is paying for a hat bad in some holistic sense? It's like, no. What I don't like is, as far as I can tell, all the incentives are going in directions that I feel are deleterious to making a particular, a piece of art, a thing that you're passionate about, whatever you call it when you're developing something and you care about it, right? They don't go in that direction. And so that's why free-to-play bothers me. If there were a bunch of examples of people doing free-to-play games that were really genuine and sincere, treated their players with respect, and all of these sorts of things that aren't really true from what I see. And like you said, even the best example are people who ship the Christmas crate, right?
Hey, the Christmas crate's good.
Okay.
No, no. Do you know what they do? Do you know what they do?
Uh,
If you buy, you know about the gifting?
well, so the Christmas crate I'm talking about is one year, and I don't know which year this was. They came out with a crate, right? And the crate was that I think this was for Team Fortress 2, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
The Christmas crate was you get a Christmas crate in your inventory, and you don't know what's in it, but there's like different they have some like probabilities that they'll tell you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And you have
They have this in all their games.
it just shows up, and you have to then pay whatever it is, $5 to unlock your Christmas crate. If you don't unlock it by December 25th, it goes away.
Yeah, yeah, they do this all the time.
Right?
I think that might be like Varoufakis's idea too,
Yeah.
which is odd.
So it's like it's a classic example of like the best people you can point to are using the dirtiest, worst, most manipulative things you can possibly do in an economic system to take money from their players. Now, again, like I said, that's not a criticism of free to play. It's just it looks to the outside observer like the incentives in free to play, which point in that direction, are 100% followed. It's like, yep, you get exactly what you think you would get. You get it. So again, feel free to be the very first person to demonstrate that there actually is an F2P scheme that doesn't produce this. But
Oh yeah, I think you're right though. I think like inherently from a
right.
legal, like from just a legal corporation standpoint, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Like, of course that's what you're gonna
Yeah.
get, right? But I don't think that's I don't think you have to get that, right? And I don't think that your motivation of choosing free to play has to be that either.
Oh, right. And again, this is why I say it comes down to that trust me thing. And that's true, right? It's like if you have someone who will literally always make the best decisions for the players of this game, then why does it even matter what the business model is, right? The business model could be anything. The business model is we take children and throw them into a grinder and we stir it up and we produce game goo, which produces a great game. And the like super benevolent, awesome person would make sure that those were only children who were evil at heart. So we were doing a favor by grinding them up or whatever, right? So it's good. But point being, normally that's just not what humans do. That's why we are very careful about our selection of business models, is because incentives are followed. That's what humans do. And once in a while you do get, Gandhi and Jesus walk hand in hand and they decide to eschew all of these things, and it's fine. But again, like I said, so when you're asking the question of do I feel like maybe it's an okay decision, that was never really my question. My question is not, could you use this business model to do something good? Of course you could. You can use almost any business model to do something good. My thing is more like, as a business model, it is fundamentally aligning incentives in a bad direction. And I don't see really anything other than maybe the idea that I had at the end that we're talking about here that changes my mind about that.
Okay, yeah, I sort of I agree. I agree with the thing at the end being something that definitely changes your mind, or
It has that potential anyway.
yeah, yeah. But I still don't agree that like it's hard though because it is like it's true, right? You're spending money on like you're spending development resources on a store. You're not spending the development resources on a game, right?
Right.
Like that is just that's just completely true. However, there's also the things that I brought up with, the number of players and having to ongoing support costs, server costs and things like that, which free to play pays for, blah blah blah. So I don't know. I haven't I haven't changed my opinion that it's all like what you were saying, like it doesn't like your interests are not your interests are to the system produces profit. That's all it does, right? And I don't necessarily think that that is true. I'm not phrasing this well, so I
Well,
don't
let
really
me
know.
give you one more sort of example just to see if maybe this puts it in a perspective that you can either more strenuously disagree with or agree with.
Okay.
Um, so, incentives matter most, or rather, what incentives do is they determine what you will do when you are at your particular line, right? Everyone has a different line. If you're a purely profit greed motivated individual, right, then those incentives are all you would follow, right? So hopefully we agree that like if an unscrupulous person is going to do an F2P game, then they are just going to look at literally what is the things we can do that will make people buy the most stuff. That is what an unscrupulous person will do because that is what the business model encourages them to do, right? They're just,
Okay.
how can we sell the most hats? It doesn't matter. The only thing the game has to do is make them buy the hat. That's it. It doesn't have to be a good game by any other metric. It just has to make them buy the hat. And so to the extent where we will make a good game, it is only because we know that we need to make a game good enough for someone to buy a hat, right? That's what an unscrupulous, that's what someone who's literally motivated only by the money, right?
Yeah, it's a Zynga right there.
That's a Zynga, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. But other people's lines are in different places. So let's say you have the most altruistic person ever who just wants to do the best thing for the game, right?
Okay.
Well, fundamentally speaking, in order to do the best thing for the game, they need to keep their team paid, right?
Yeah.
And fundamentally speaking, if they're a nice person, they also are trying to not fire people or lay people off, right? So they have real responsibilities that they're trying to meet that are financial, right?
Yes. Yes.
When it comes down to the wire, the F2P business model means, just fundamentally, that if I have a choice between like upgrading my game server this month or fixing the store which broke and isn't working right now to buy new items, I am going to fix the store to buy new items because I know that unless I have an excess of cash where I'm just like awash in money and it doesn't matter, I need to be fixing this. That is my priority one programming problem is not to make the game better, it's to make sure that we can still sell items, right?
Absolutely.
And so that's what I'm talking about incentives. I mean, no matter where your line is, if your line is all the way down to like, okay, my line is at the point where I got to make payroll, or if your line is all the way in the other direction where it's like, I'm just trying to make the most money possible. No matter what it is, the incentives are what tell you which decision you make there, right? And what I'm saying about free to play is they never point in the direction of the game, ever, not even once. The only time the quality of the game comes into play is if you are worried that people will not play the game long enough to buy the item, right? And so it's all you. You are the only person who is bringing other incentives into it. It's Sean McGrath that is trying to encourage the game to get better, not the business model.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. I think that's fair. But you could also say that. I mean, this isn't true so much now, but this was true before Twitch and YouTube. Is that even in commercial games, all that mattered was the screenshot, right? And the review that you got in PC Gamer or whatever,
Yeah.
10 years back. That's
Yes.
all that mattered.
Yes.
And that games would only strive for that and nothing else, right?
Yes.
Like how many polygons can we render in the screenshot? Who
Right.
cares about anything else, right?
And if I may just point something out there, that is why we have fantastic graphics now. Full stop.
Maybe, but that's also why we have shitty games now.
Yes. No, and that's exactly right. That is exactly true. So this is exactly what I'm saying. The incentives of your business model matter. The fact that we have a screenshot-centric, trailer-centric way of selling games right now is why our games are universally gorgeous. It worked. Now, it didn't work for the thing that maybe we wanted it to work for most, but it works.
But it's actually had massive detriment to quality of games, right?
Certainly. But
like
it works.
massive, like huge, giant, like you can't make a game anymore. It's impossible because you've got to make it look this good or whatever, and developing tools to whatever. The whole bunch of reasons. We all know the reasons why. So I don't know, like.
So F2P, that vector, the one you were just worried about with graphics and screenshots, that vector is pointing towards store. The thing that they need to do is have the best possible purchasing motivator, whatever that is. The game, what we will have in the future, if F2P was the predominant business model, like screenshot purchasing is for the past 10 years or whatever, 20 years, is we will have games that are fantastic at selling you stuff. Just like you said, we didn't get great games out of the graphics boom because the incentives aren't pointing that direction.
No. Yeah, you're right. No, you're absolutely right. No, that's completely true. But, we did get things, having good graphics is a good thing, right? And, like, having super powerful hardware does allow, like, I couldn't have made, 10 years ago or whatever, I couldn't have made, like, a high production game on hardware at the time.
Exactly.
It was just way too hard. Now it's super easy, right?
Yes.
So, like, there has been advantages that could be applied to making games better. And, maybe they are being applied by people who aren't going for that super high-end screenshot or whatever. Yeah, that's a good point. I like that. Yeah, it's good. Well, I think is there anything else you wanted to add to this now?
I think I said basically everything I'd say now. I mean, granted, like I said, one of the problems with picking me for this is I literally don't think I've ever actually personally played a free-to-play game in any real capacity, right? Like I've never played Dota, for example. So there may be other aspects of it that I am the wrong person to argue because I just don't know enough about them, right? But I think I covered everything that I think about from a financial standpoint, business model standpoint, ethical standpoint. I think I got basically everything I think about in there.
Yeah, I think
and
you
it seemed kind of productive too. I mean, it seemed like we got somewhere interesting with it.
Yeah, I think you covered most of the. I more or less have the same issues with free to play as you do, right? Like, I hate everything about it that you hate for the exact same reasons, right? And my only perspective was, hey, I'm not coming at it from that point of view. I'm coming at it from, hey, this is actually the best option for this game. And your point is completely valid that, like, because of the way that the business is set up and the model is set up, it is literally entirely up to a benevolent dictator to ensure that evil stuff doesn't happen. So yeah, I think and then you came up with that fantastic idea of the drive to make it not free to play for the next year. I sort of like that. Do you know if Penny Arcade continued to do that after their first year of doing it?
I feel like they've done it at least twice. But the thing that I assume, and I guess I don't know if this is true or not, but the thing that I assume about that is that I don't know, like Penny Arcade in general, I don't really know much about their business model and how much that ad part is part of it. Like, I don't really know enough about that. All I know is that they did, I think, do it at least 2 years where they did, if you paid a certain amount by this date, it was ad free. It was a Kickstarter, right?
Is it ad free now? No, it's not.
So,
I just went to their website. They have ads.
Yeah.
So it didn't work, clearly.
Yeah, I mean they did it. They definitely did it for 1 year. But again, like if you looked at the prices too on it, it didn't look like they had enough people who were willing to pay for this. To me.
Yeah, it was like $1 million or something they wanted, right?
Yeah, I don't really remember, but it was like it didn't look like they had people who cared enough about having ads off the front page to actually want to do it.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah,
And
that's too
and
bad.
and again, the other part about that too is like in the case of this game, right? The reason that I was trying to come up with that idea as well is like if you literally don't think you can, if you literally think F2P is your only option for making the game, which kind of is what it keeps sounding like you're saying, right? I can't think of another way to do it, right? If you can't think of another way to do it, and you give players the option of funding it in an alternative way, then at least if they don't, you're like, well, I did the best I could have done, right? Which is a better thing to say than just I made it F2P and then I took all the money, right?
Yeah, I know.
So it's
I
at
think,
least
I
so
think
that's
it's
an
right.
improvement too on the standpoint of like at least you maybe you sleep a little better at night making an F2P game if you know that you gave people the option of having it not be an F2P game, right?
Yeah, I think
So
that, and I think
that seems like a plus.
I think that's totally fair. Like to do, and I think it's a good idea to do
Yeah.
that because like if I don't have to worry about a store and selling shit to people, my life is way better too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a good idea. I'm gonna do that.
All
Good
right.
thinking. Good thinking. I like it.
Well, yeah, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. It was
Yeah,
very
thank you for
interesting.
doing this. I really appreciate it. It
Oh, I
made me
had
feel
fun.
a lot better. Oh, good. I'm glad.
And I don't know how much money we made. Do you want me to chat? I don't know.
Yeah. Find out how much. How
I
did
don't
your
know.
little freedom?
I don't.
free-to-play
I don't have an
go?
easy way to sum it up. I guess. I think we made. So we made. Okay, we made two one. So we made $8. Plus, so that'd be $12 and $20. So we made like $32.
You made $32.
Yes.
Yo, free to play is amazing.
I don't know what to say. So I ran that as a bit of a joke, but in reality, it does argue a little bit for the effectiveness of your business model because, yeah, I don't know what to say. Point being,
I don't think we need to argue about whether or not free to play
is
can make
effective.
money.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
I think that's pretty clear that it.
So
works.
anyway, what will we do with that money? I don't know. I will try to figure out something to buy for $30 as part of Handmade Con that we can give away. $30 worth of candy or something. I don't know what.
Okay, well, whatever that number is, if you're giving it away at Handmade Con, I will contribute that a total amount. So if it was
Wow, okay,
$30
all right.
or whatever,
You're,
I'll
like,
double
matching.
it.
All right. Well, I will actually go do the math exactly.
Okay, you're gonna have to wait until Handmade Con to get the money because I don't have a credit card. So.
I can front the $30.
All right, whatever it is, I'll make sure to
I
give
think,
it to
I
you at
think it's
Handmade
something
Con.
like $30, so it's not going to be very much.
Oh, whatever.
All right, man.
All right, well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I feel good about the conversation.
It was a lot of fun, and so hopefully that was useful. And also, does this game have a name? Like for people who are watching?
No name yet.
So we got nothing yet. All right.
Nothing
What's your Twitch channel if they want to check it out?
SSS McGrath. I haven't
McGrath.
streamed in a while. It's
Okay.
gonna be another 2 or 3 weeks before I stream again anyway.
All right. Well, if you want to check out, if you want to subscribe to his stream to see the game when it comes out, SSS McGrath on Twitch.
Blame Casey's former company for not allowing me to stream the API until I've actually paid for a license. They won't let me stream the trial. They were like, you can't show your game unless you can't show your game with
Hilarious.
Granny in it unless you've actually paid for a license. So,
Hilarious.
yeah.
Hey, man.
So tell Jeff it's a bunch of bullshit.
You want to be able to stream just the trial.
I wanted to be able to stream implementing it.
You'd think that actually streaming the trial they would like because then they can watch you and make sure that you're actually doing it.
I don't know, man. They were like,
ask.
no.
That's weird. All right.
Yeah.
I'll ask them about that.
Oh well, thanks.
Not that I have any sway there at all, but I'll still ask because I'm curious to know why they would even care. But
Yeah, I think the trial's over in 2 weeks anyway, so I don't
Yeah.
think it matters much. But yeah.
all right, man.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Take it easy.
Okay. See you.
All right. Well, there you have it. So hopefully I asked the questions that other people would want to have asked. We don't actually know exactly how this will turn out. And I guess like I was saying before, I'm certainly skeptical of free-to-play, but not necessarily because, like all business models, there's a dirty aspect to it. But that's true of almost everything. So it's not so much that I'm, anti-free-to-play because I think that there's something very specific about the actual act of free-to-playness that makes the game bad. It's more because, as far as I can tell, all of the incentives in the business model are aimed in the wrong direction and don't encourage that, right? And so that was mostly the angle that I wanted to sort of explore there, was just to figure out what was going on in that from that standpoint. And I feel like Sean, I mean, it did seem very clear that, like, obviously he doesn't feel like he will do those things because he's him, and feels like he's not going to do those. Who knows, right? And I don't know, was that the case with Zynga when they started, or were they purely people who were just out to be unscrupulous and greedy right from the outset, right? I have no idea. I don't know how people get corrupted in these things. I don't know what happens. I can tell you that I have seen some people who have, traditionally were not particularly corrupt individuals, have gone on to do some fairly shady things and convinced themselves, despite, possibly other evidence that what they were doing was somehow not unscrupulous, right? So I do worry about that a little bit, because, it's not like everyone who's evil wears an evil mustache or goes like this with their pinky, so you can necessarily know ahead of time if you're someone who's going to make an unscrupulous decision in the future. I think it's a little more subtle than that and a little more creepy. But again, the fact that Sean was debating this in the first place does sort of suggest to me that at least he's taking it a little bit seriously. And I think if you are going to do an F2P game, that's at least a good start. Also, it kind of felt like we came up with sort of some interesting ideas there about how to maybe make it so that players can encourage you not to be unscrupulous. And so maybe some of those could be implemented, and they could help create, a free-to-play business model that wasn't potentially so deleterious. Again, that's purely speculative. I have no idea if that can actually work. And until we see some examples of that working, we will really not know, because it's anyone's guess. I think that's about it. I guess on the chat, I don't know how you guys felt about that. So I guess maybe I'll go to the chat. I guess it's, oh my God, it's 11 o'clock here. That was very long. But I'll go to the chat and see anyone who's still watching, which I guess is actually a lot of people, it looks like. You can let me know, did that seem relatively good? Do we cover the things that you wanted to cover? Or are we going to have to do a redo at some point where people send in questions or something like this? Let's see. Gary Johansson, why do you hate the selling of hats? I don't actually hate the selling of hats in any particular way more than any other aspect of free-to-play. I think it was just that for some reason that was like one of the first things that Valve was doing, was selling hats or something like this. I don't remember, like, in the TFTs. For some reason it stuck as like the iconic sort of F2P transaction, is I sold this hat, like I put a new hat on my character or whatever. So it's actually not so much that that's something I particularly hate. It's more that that's my go-to turn of phrase for free-to-play transaction. Did you manage to discuss any issues surrounding being locked into a certain game due to the amount of money you've spent on it? Not particularly, but the idea that I sort of proposed at the end would have alleviated that problem, because if the cap was hit, would allow somebody to access everything, right? And I think Sean's monthly cap also means that the high spending players, which are kind of, I guess, the people you're talking about, also can always cap out a month and get everything in the game. He was saying that basically, like, if you spend $50 on the game in a month, you just get everything for that month. So you can always opt to just unlock everything for yourself at any time and kind of go back. Maybe that's a little bit of mitigation, but in general, no, I don't think we talked about what you were saying there. And I'm not very familiar with that myself, unfortunately. Like I said, I'm one of the reasons that I'm not necessarily the best person for the debate. I try to do a good job, but I don't play F2P games. I've never spent $150 buying hats or something like that, right? So I don't have any personal perspective on that, really. BGN Games, or Icarus says, would you play an F2P MOBA of Master Spy? Well, I'm the Master Spy, so I don't know what that would mean, right? Because everyone would just, I'd Master Spy all over them, and they would just get Master Spied right out. They're like apprentice spies, and I'm the Master Spy, so how do you even have a MOBA, right? Maybe it could be asymmetric, like I'm the Master Spy, and everyone knows I'm the Master Spy, and everyone else is like an apprentice spy, and it's like 10-on-1 or something. BTN Games, I think it was ideal as a thought process to consider the impact of the model you choose. Thank you. Out of interest, how do you feel about a game where you start with a certain amount of game tracks, and then you could buy expansion pack with more tracks in the future should you make them? So personally, I feel like that's actually a good business model. Um, uh, the problem is it has a few problems with it that, again, I feel like if I were taking the devil's advocate position, I would point them out, and they're very similar to free to play. Basically, what they are is if you are talking about a model where every few months we come out with an expansion pack that you can buy, and it's a legitimate, well-considered thing that's good, that we worked hard on, and we're selling you this additional part of the game, that seems totally fine to me, right? That's like people bought this game, they really liked it, the dev team worked hard to make it bigger and better, and now they're selling that to you. That seems totally fine to me. Unfortunately, like I said, it kind of has a little bit of the problem of F2P, which is that there are some incentives to then starting to like drag out updates into lots of little purchasable pieces. And you saw that happen with things once DLC, like cheap DLC, became a thing. So in the old days when you had to go to the store, you had to buy an expansion pack off the rack. That was had a lot more integrity because it meant that you had to sell them a high-priced, single, infrequently shipped thing that I feel like maybe didn't have so many bad incentives associated with it. Now that you can sell little things for 99 cents, $3, whatever, expansion pack could mean anything, and it's a little more nebulous. And so I think it kind of does get back into the territory where it's like, as a business model, I don't necessarily like it as much. So, like for example, this is something we've thought about at Molly Rocket, about how we're doing things, and we would like to do games that have potentially expansion packs with them. And so we, from my mind, that's definitely something that I feel like has to be very clear what it is. You have to limit the number you do, and you have to put in a lot of checks and balances to make sure that that remains an ethical way to sell things. And unfortunately, a lot like what Sean was saying, where it's like kind of like, how does a good person codify these things? It is very hard to codify. And so, so like I said, I don't know, and I have some concerns about it. I guess basically what I would prefer is if the marketplace itself had the concept of an expansion pack that was something different from DLC, so that it was clear what it was, and you could be a developer who consciously, specifically said, we do expansion packs, not DLC. Because I do think there's a difference between those two things, right? And it's just, that doesn't exist. And so as a developer, it's, again, entirely honor system. And honor system stuff just isn't necessarily that good. How do you know you can trust me, Casey Muratori, to make those decisions about this game, right? And so again, like I think there's some of those same problems. I don't think there's nearly as many as F2P, but they're there. How about P2F? Lock players in a small room until they finish the game. Love it. Would love to see it. Question: a $50 monthly limit with benefits incentivizes players to pay a lot of money each month for items they probably don't need. At least there's a risk there. I think that's possibly true. I mean, like I said, I like you saw, I wasn't that interested in the $50 cap. I didn't think that was that big of an improvement, but I don't know. It's probably better than nothing, right? It's probably better than letting people spend $2,000 a month. The only flaw in your discussion is that you look at games from the perspective of two highly intelligent people and forgot that 90% of players are retarded idiots who will gladly eat my star and ask for more with a proper advertisement involved. Yeah, I mean, what can you say, right? Like, I think first of all, that's not necessarily entirely the case, right? Like, there are certainly markets of players who are intelligent, right? And especially when you're talking about indie gaming, those are people who are seeking out specific, less advertised experiences, and they might be being a little more thoughtful about their game buying, right? And so it's not necessarily the case that 95% of players for all games are going to be some kind of like abstract consumer like you're making them out to be, right? So I don't know. Is it true that the public at large does not seem to show a lot of discretion in terms of what they purchase? Yes, I won't argue with that. And unfortunately, I don't know that there's really anything you can do about that. Would I love to have some way we could wave a wand and make a magic educated populace? No, but at the same time, it's like, well, that's true of all business models, right? All business models definitely have the case that the fact that people are not educated consumers as much as we might like them to be, it means it leads to worse products. And that's true of all business models that we currently have, unfortunately. Gasto5, the problem with your suggested method is that everyone that wanted the F2P turned off from the beginning of the year will have to buy the standard price in unison or have the high inequality charging that Sean complained about. So one thing that maybe you could do about to fix that problem, right, would be maybe you could imagine doing something where instead of you actually paying the free-to-play stuff, it's more of a pledge drive, and if the pledge drive isn't successful, that money is never charged. So it's more like a Kickstarter, right? And then that way, everyone puts their money in, and if it's successful, it gets charged. If it's not, it isn't, and it's just regular F2P from there. So the Kickstarter model, I think, if you followed that more closely, would be a better solution, right? And that's why I was trying to push Sean. I wasn't so coherent about it because, like I said, I only just thought of it. But that's why I was trying to push Sean away from the concept of it's F2P until it hits a cap. I don't know if that's necessarily the best model. I think there should be ways of people pledging the money, and then if it doesn't happen, they don't necessarily have to spend that money on F2P. Miblo says, I slept through the whole discussion. I apologize. Will you be uploading it to YouTube? Yes, with Sean's permission, obviously. I will check with him, but I did record it. It should be recorded here, and so I can do that. But at the very least, it's streamed on Twitch, so it's already on Twitch on demand and will be for a few days anyway, regardless. Mr. Fourth Dimension, just wish there was some way to make the lopsided payment distribution better, or at least make the lopsided needs-based. I couldn't agree more. Again, that was a big point that I brought up. I don't know how you fix that problem. I wish that was the case as well. Godfather, expansion packs of the old days had enough content to justify a $30 price tag that gave you 10 hours more gameplay, or even more depending on the type of game. Yes, and that's exactly what I was trying to say when I was talking about that. And that's like what we were talking about at Molly when we were talking about how we want to do the game. That was definitely something that we were sort of saying is like, you know, we feel like that we would want that, right? You know, as we sell the game and then it's, you know, it's a $15 expansion pack that's actually supposed to be a legitimate, like buying a game for $15, and the only difference between it and buying a game for $15 is that that game adds on to another game, not that, you know, it's just something we concocted to get you pay $15 more, right? But the problem again is that the business model doesn't really support that because digital distribution is so easy and because there's so much you know, sort of uncertainty around and all that stuff. It is kind of easy to game that system, right? It's easy to not ship something that's worth it to the player. The Geek Pirate, it's time to bring back shareware, right? I feel it in my bones. Well, I don't know about that. I mean, people seem to think that demos don't really work very well anymore. A lot of the data shows that demos lead to much lower sales, and maybe that's because people are playing the games and then just not buying them because they weren't good, but maybe it's because they only want to play a little bit and then they move on, and that's not really fair to the developer because they should be paid for that time if they actually were enjoying it. I don't know, and I don't pretend to know. Icarus, Easy Sigh, would micropayments work? That is, I still don't understand why he thinks a subscription model with low monthly prices wouldn't work. People who want to play the game will play the game. Well, what he kept saying, and I don't know if this is true, this is just what he believes, and I mean, you know, I'm in no position to argue about this aspect of the market, so I certainly can't say one way or the other whether he's likely to be correct, but what he was saying is you need the non-paying players because you need that many people in the service. Now, I don't know, I probably would never go that route, but if that really was true, so if you're taking if you're taking that belief of his at face value, which, you know, at some level could be true, it's not definitely not true, right? Then you have to concede that he does need a way of offering his game at $0 to some segment of the market, right? And so the question is, how do you do that? So it's a legitimate question, you know, and you know, my answer would be I don't want to make a game if that game requires me to use that business model, right? But that's my feeling about it, and so he doesn't feel that way about it, and so that's, you know, I guess where the argument comes in. Because they weren't good, but maybe it's because they only want to play a little bit and then they move on, and that's not really fair to the developer because they should be paid for that time if they actually were enjoying it. I don't know, and I don't pretend to know. Icarus, Rareware, Easy Sigh. Would micropayments work? That is, I still don't understand why he thinks a subscription model with low monthly prices wouldn't work. People who want to play the game will play the game. Well, what he kept saying, and I don't know if this is true. This is just what he believes, and I mean, I'm in no position to argue about this aspect of the market. So I certainly can't say one way or the other whether he's likely to be correct. But what he was saying is, you need the non-paying players because you need that many people in the service. Now, I don't know, I probably would never go that route, but if that really was true, so if you're taking if you're taking that belief of his at face value, which, at some level could be true, it's not definitely not true, right? Then you have to concede that he does need a way of offering his game at $0 to some segment of the market, right? And so the question is, how do you do that? So it's a legitimate question, and my answer would be, I don't want to make a game if that game requires me to use that business model, right? But that's my feeling about it. And so he doesn't feel that way about it, and so that's, I guess where the argument comes in. Oh, Sean McGrath says, YouTube away, I don't care. I put everything I said in the public domain. Okay, so basically he's saying we can upload this. And also, Sean, by the way, I will put it on the Handmade Hero BitTorrent. I'll put the raw file on there. So if you would like to grab it and upload it to your YouTube channel or archive it or do whatever you want, you can grab it from that BitTorrent, the raw file, so you can just have your own copy of the recording. NC Games, is needs-based really the fairest bar? How about how much you like the game-based? Like I said, I don't really know about that part or either way. All I was trying to point out with that particular part was that the people who pay don't necessarily fit any metric other than just they were the people who paid. And so it's not true that that somehow aligns better with the people who liked the game the most paid the most, or the people who could afford the most paid the most. None of that is necessarily true at all, right? There's nothing in the system that guarantees that. It's simply that the people who were compelled to pay paid, and the people who didn't. And that's all we know about it, right? We don't have any data or evidence that suggests any other correlation. Gary Johansson, can I be the guy that sells you unscrupulous items in the game you are making, like the gun salesman in Resident Evil 4? In what game are you talking about? Are you talking about in Sean's game? You'll have to ask him. Okay, now, how did you come up with that explanation of player consumer behavior, the one involving incentives responses, those incentives being used wrongly in F2P? Well, I guess I'm not sure exactly what the question is. In general, that is the way I think of economics models, and that's typically the way that economists think of economics models, is what are people incentivized to do and what aren't people incentivized to do. And in general, there's some places that I agree with economists and places I don't agree with economists. The places that I don't agree with economists are on consumer behavior. So in terms of consumer behavior, I don't agree with sort of the classical economic thinking that people always do what is best for them in terms of their monetary incentives. I believe people are much more behavioral, much more Skinnerian, and can be reinforced to do things that are very much not good incentives for them. But where I do agree with economists is that businesses tend to follow incentives quite well. And the reason for that, I think, is because they are the ones who are actively weeded out. Meaning there is a natural selection process in business that enforces the people who do not follow the incentives are weeded out, and the people who do become stronger. And that ensures that you only end up with businesses who are good at following the incentives. Ergo, the incentives of your economics model tend to be followed. And I think all the evidence that we see reinforces that. Basically what you see, like in the United States, you see primarily corporations who are very effective at maximizing the incentives of the systems that we set up. And so the way I think of free-to-play is exactly the same. I say once you have a marketplace that works in this particular way and customers start engaging in it, I think you will see that whatever the incentives are for purchasing there, that is what will get followed on the business side. And the businesses who don't follow it will simply go away. Now, one of the things that Sean can do potentially is if he keeps his costs down, he can come out of that top tier of competition, right? If you're not trying to compete with League of Legends and Dota, and you're trying to compete for a lesser slot, games that cost $1 million to produce a year instead of $100 million to produce a year or whatever, then maybe you won't get weeded out because you're not actually competing in the same incentive space. There's room in the slop potentially for ethical people to find a way to operate ethically despite the incentives. That may happen, right? So I don't deny that that's possible. It's just that that is not what the system is designed to produce. Let's see. Is there a release date yet for what? What are we talking about? Is there a release date for what? Gary Johansson, no, the Molly Rocket game. Nobody sells you items in the Molly Rocket game, so to speak. At least not in the way that you were suggesting. So, sorry, there's not a position for that. NC Games, what's your personal idea of the best model to incentivize a great game? You talked about the graphics-focused issues with the standard $60 model. I don't know that there is much beyond the model that we have right now, where we're basically saying, like, okay, an indie marketplace with reasonable press, $15, $25 price points, and educated consumers is the best thing we've found so far. And, I really don't know how we make something better than that. At the end of the day, purchasing decisions are still going to be made by individuals, and enough people need to decide to buy a particular game in order for that game to be successful. And so at the end of the day, I think it really comes back to the fact that no matter what business models we choose, if you want to get past the sort of standard, I pay you for a game and I have the game and I play it, if you want to get any better than that, it's going to start attacking the problem at the market, at the audience. How do we get players who engage more actively with the games? How do we get players who demand more from their games? How do we get players who are more aware about which games are available and which ones they might like, right? And again, that's a media issue, that's an education issue, and those are just really hard problems. So, I think that currently the most ethical thing we have is just the standard one of you go to Steam, you buy a game for $15 and you play it. That's the most ethical thing we have right now, and getting beyond that, I think, starts to get into issues that maybe go beyond just the economic model. This is adequate. If you do this sort of chat again, I would recommend trying to have Sean Plott as a guest. I do not know who that is, but I can try searching for them. Goland, the coded game you're making. Okay, so you're talking about if the release date? No, there is not a release date for it yet. No. Pagan Heart. We haven't even announced it yet. It's pretty early to announce a release date. If you're talking about the one at Molly Rocket, anyway. Pagan Heart, definitely like the system of raising the costs and extra needed for growth, etc., but then having a supporter perk for those who donate a certain amount for the extra oomph benefits, and if that fails, free after becomes the fallback. One thing to help incentivize people into buying that might be if they had committed to that donation but it fails as a whole, they still get that benefit regardless. Or they just don't have to pay it. So it could be strictly donation, right? So it's like all those donations pile up, either they get all charged and it's free, or it just does free to play and they aren't charged. That would also work. Time to switch hats, that's a good point. I think I'm gonna go back to no hat. We'll just end the hats. People bought all 3 hats, so we ended up in a situation where where that wasn't necessary. But all right, folks, it's pretty far past my bedtime, so I have to go. Thank you very much for joining us for this discussion. I enjoyed it. Hopefully, Sean also got sort of what he needed to get out of it in terms of his own consideration and what he thinks is maybe the right course for the game. And also I would thank him sort of in the abstract as well for taking the time to consider it, because at the end of the day, it's very obvious that players accept free-to-play, and there's nothing stopping Sean from just going ahead and being as unscrupulous as he wants to be and making a free-to-play game. So at the end of the day, even though it's not really a business model that I like, and it's one that I have obviously lots of reservations about that I voiced, at the end of the day, I do appreciate the fact that he's taking the time to think it through and maybe to try to not be unscrupulous about it that's more than a lot of people are doing. So in so much as I can say that I think it's a really sort of dangerous idea, at the same time it's like, well, since you are doing the dangerous idea, thank you for trying to do it in a more ethical way than you have to, because certainly nothing, again, the whole point of the business model is there's nothing in there that requires you to be scrupulous in any way, really. So that's that. We'll be back tomorrow for the final episode of Handmade Hero this week. That will be at the standard Handmade Hero time now, 5 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. Love to see you back here for that. Thanks for joining us for this discussion, and we will talk to you guys. Well, we'll see you guys on the internet. Also, don't forget Sean McGrath. Just if you didn't already know who he was, there's SSS McGrath, I believe, on Twitch. Is his Twitch channel, so you can go here and watch that. And also, if you would rather follow him on Twitter, he also has a Twitter feed you can subscribe to, and that is in the exact same place, word-wise, SSS McGrath. So yeah, if you're interested, if you liked what he had to say, you're interested to see how his game development goes, then definitely go here and maybe subscribe to his Twitter feed so you can keep in touch. All right, that's it. Take it easy, everyone. Hope to see you guys back here tomorrow. Until then, have fun programming, and I'll see you guys on the internet.
Keep the company in business, right? I
Right.
wouldn't do that. I would raise the cap if the dollar is suddenly worth nothing.
Okay, so it's basically like a